wrestling friends. I'm Matt Coon, and you're listening to Say Yeah, FTR with Dax Harwood. Dax Harwood, this is the show. We started with 64. Actually, we started with more than that. We went to 64. We're down to 32. Then we had the Sweet 16, which was a YouTube exclusive, which is going to be contained on this episode. And now we're at the final four. This episode, it's not really a best of because we're putting all the March Madness together, plus the Final Four. It is the complete March Madness, Tag Team March Madness Final Four. What a trip it's been, huh?
It has been crazy. And now I'm just looking over the Final Four, and dude, this is going to be heartbreaking because I don't know what to do. I'm going to need your help with this.
Well, before we get to that, we're going to go ahead and put on the previous episodes, which are the top 64. And then we got down to 16 in that episode. And then our episode where we did the top 16 or Sweet 16. And then we're gonna have for you brand new content, the Final Four, coming up right now.
NMLS number 65084, equal housing landed. Woo!
As an adult, don't we all miss spring break? Nothing like taking a week off from all your responsibilities. Well, here's the next best thing for adults, a spring break from house payments. SaveWithConrad.com can help you get rid of all your credit card debt, just like that. We're routinely helping our listeners save $500, $600, $700, even $800 a month. And you don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket to do this, but check this out, no house payments for 2 months at SaveWithConrad.com.
All right, so this idea of this tag team March Madness is to come up with the greatest tag team of all time, according to Dax Harwood. Now, there was criteria put in place. Dax, do you want to talk about the criteria that you're going to have in deciding who wins these matchups before we announce the brackets?
Well, the same criteria that I used to have these wrestlers, these tag teams on here. And their rankings and their seedings. I went through, dude, I can't remember exactly the number. I had them written down. It was 100 and something teams, that I had written down. And for example, I got the Rockers, and I think I put the Rockers at a 7th seed, maybe. I can't remember. But, a lot of people were like, oh, they should have been, a higher seed. And maybe they should have. I don't know. But I'm thinking about an influence on the business. Obviously, the Rockers a huge influence. Money drawing feuds really had no money drawing feuds, and the only two that they had were with Playboy Buddy Rose and Doug Summers in AWA, but that was during the dying years of AWA, and Hercules and Paul Roma, Power and Glory, where they took the chain to Marty's knee. And, they had a few matches after that. But other than that, they really didn't have money drawing feuds. I know they had the feud with the Brain Busters. And obviously I love those matches. But that feud was more for the house shows than it was for television. And they took those matches around the house shows, and they did have the Saturday night's main events, but it really was never a big focus. So the Rockers weren't a big focus as far as that goes. Also I'm using in-ring work, titles won, longevity. That's a big thing for me too. Like, someone said, why didn't you put the Rock and Sock Connection? I think Rock and Sock Connection is a revisionist history kind of thing. I think it's something that WWE wants you to think is a great tag team, but they, how long were they really together? A few months, you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't think they did anything. They obviously, Mick Foley and The Rock completely changed our industry. They did separately as separate entities. As a tag team, they had the segment, This Is Your Life segment. But really, what did they do other than that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like including Hulk Hogan and Edge as a tag team.
Right. Yes.
They won the tag team championships, but you don't really think of them as a tag team. Like, of course, it being Twitter and Instagram, people always, the funniest question was someone would be like, where the fuck is so-and-so? And I just tweet like, look closer, so because there's 64 teams on there. And then, some other people had some ideas. I want to talk about 3 tag teams that have been left off. 2 or 1. One is one that you mentioned, which was APA, right? I noticed we didn't have Powers of Faces of Fear, Ming and Barbarian on there. They were together for a while. And then a lot of people asked about Bad Company / Orient Express. And what do you think about those 3 being left off? I think you said that APA might have been an oversight.
Yeah, APA probably could have been put on. I probably could have included them because they were tag team champions. The only real thing about the APA was they didn't, and I could be wrong. You might can help me out, but I don't think they really had any sort of money drawing feud. I think that they drew money, but I don't think they had a real money drawing feud, and I think they were box office, but not really necessarily with a feud. I think they were more box office, right. As in like the entertainment value of their segments and things like that, which is not a bad thing. But as far as influence on the business and stuff like that, I probably could have included them, but at the time I didn't think so. Bad Company, again, during the dying days, even more so than the Rockers of AWA, they did have a feud with the Rockers in AWA. But other than that, nothing of substance there. WWE, they had not even really a feud with the Rockers, they were
mostly an enhancement tag team. They were, like the level of Roma and Jim Powers. They weren't,
Yeah, and they were thrown in there with other guys to have good matches, basically, or make the other team look good. They did have the incredible Rockers Orient Express tag team match from Royal Rumble 1991. But what else can you think about other than that? And listen to me. I think that Pat Tanaka is one of the most underrated talents ever. But that doesn't necessarily qualify him to be one of the greatest tag teams of all time. And who was the other one again? I'm sorry.
Ming and Barbarian.
Oh yeah, Ming and Barbarian. So Ming and Barbarian, I feel that Barb and Warlord could have been on this more than Ming and Barbarian. Ming and Barbarian were a team from 96 to maybe early 98. And then they broke up and had this feud. But again, never were they in a big money drawing feud. They did have something with the Outsiders late 96 or maybe it was 97 at like the Halloween Havoc. But other than that, man, they were badasses. And I loved them as a team. Loved them as a team. Even as a kid, I loved them as a team. But I didn't feel they qualified as one of the greatest tag teams of all time because longevity, because of influence on the business, matches, money drawing feuds. They didn't really hit those criteria. That doesn't mean they shouldn't be on there. Other people, maybe it's maybe they can be, but just in my opinion, I don't think so.
Well, guys, we've always heard from everybody. You want to hear about tag team wrestling. You want to hear about tag team psychology. You want to hear Dax talk about old tag teams. Well, this is your chance. Dax, you mentioned a little bit earlier to me off air that maybe you wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the history of tag team wrestling and maybe even the point of it as we start to judge these brackets.
Yeah, I think probably the history and stuff we could do I did tell you this, but I think we could do an episode on that eventually.
All right.
But I feel that there are some teams that could have been ranked higher, should have probably been ranked higher, that weren't. For example, the Fabulous Kangaroos. They probably could have been a number 1 seed because they were the first real money drawing tag team. But for me and for everyone else, there isn't very much footage of those guys. You know what I mean? Like there's not there's not a ton of stuff to go off of except for news excerpts or live event reviews or houses drawn or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with the Assassins. There's a lot more footage of the Assassins than there are the Fabulous Kangaroos. But from what I understand and the stories that I've heard, and this is from, my peers and even, just reading articles and stuff, the Assassins have a huge influence on the business, completely changed the whole concept of tag team wrestling. So they could have probably been ranked higher, but I don't have anything to really judge that off of. Also, Patterson and Stevens are supposed to be the greatest tag team of all time, the greatest working tag team of all time, drew a ton of money in California and a few other places. And they changed the style of tag team wrestling at the time too. But there's not very much footage of Patterson and Stevens. So, there's a lot of factors that go into it. And, someone like, for example, Jim Cornette, who is, older than me by, 20, 25 years,
Right.
he got to see a lot more stuff than I did. And so he maybe knows a little better. But I got to be a fan of some of the stuff from, late 90s that he didn't really probably pay attention to on forward. So, it all depends on your era, when you grew up.
Sure.
Like, I'm sure someone who's 23 years old doesn't understand why the Assassins are ranked so high. But then there's somebody who's probably 62 years old who is saying, oh my God, why are Arn and Ole, why are they so low on the list? Well, I put the Andersons, Minnesota Wrecking Crew. I wanted to include Lars, Gene, Ole, and I lumped them all together. But like my dad's favorite tag team of all time is Gene and Ole. And he talks about how great they were, but there's not a shit ton of footage on them. So I don't know how to really judge them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is too, guys, is this is supposed to be fun. Like in a world where wrestlers actually get upset at their rankings in video games, let's just go ahead and have fun with this. This is from Dax's viewpoint. And like you said, there might be a recency bias on it, but that's a lot of it due to footage and Dax's point of view. And of course, you are free to argue. You're free to have your own point of view. But most of all, you're encouraged to follow along and to have fun. Are you ready to get started, Dax Harwood?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I think it'd be kind of fun on a couple of these, as you talk about who wins, maybe even talk about the kind of match they might have, because I think that's kind of a fun part of it too, is a lot of people are like, ooh, that would be great to see them in the ring together, and go ahead.
And as I told you earlier off air, I was going to fill this whole bracket out this morning, but I thought that we would get more of an organic feel because I think that's the way to go. So I'm going to choose my winners right live as we record this.
All right. So same here, and you guys can download the bracket over, man, I got to tell you, Dax, like we put this bracket on our link tree, which is linktree.com/FTR with Dax, where you get tickets for our live shows. And our t-shirts, by the way, people are buying these t-shirts. Go ahead and go to daxharwood.com and get yourself a t-shirt. But on this link, thousands of people have clicked this link, like 3,000 people. Like it's insane the amount of people who are interested in this. So guys, thanks a lot. We're going to start with the Hardy Boys bracket just to get you on the right, you and I on the same page. Are you ready to get started?
Yes. So the way I printed it off, I don't have like a bracket.
Oh, okay. We're going to start with, so I'll just go ahead and start with, if you saw 4 graphics on online, it's kind of 4 groups of 16. And so this particular group of 16 includes the Hardy Boys, which is one of your number 1 seeds. So the first match I have, I'm going to let you look for it, is Hardy Boys versus The Bar. I think that's a pretty easy one to kind of set.
Yeah.
There's really no dispute on that one, is there not?
No, not really. But that's no disrespect to Claudio and Sheamus. A lot of people wondered why I put Claudio and Sheamus here. There was a period of about 2 years where they were carrying, Claudio and Sheamus were carrying tag team wrestling in the WWE, and they were synonymous with the tag team belts. I think they might have won them 3 times. I could be wrong, but they were having great matches with people like oh my God, was it Seth and Dean?
Right.
They had great matches with the Hardy Boys as well.
New Day,
yeah, and we even got an opportunity to wrestle them once too. But they were carrying tag team wrestling for a period of time that I felt tag team wrestling wasn't being represented the best way it could, and I thought they were bringing it back and doing a great job of that. But yes, ultimately the Hardy Boys are one of the greatest of all time. They changed the landscape of not just tag team wrestling, but wrestling too. You know how many wrestlers came after them wearing the exact same stuff the Hardy Boys would wear, come out to the same kind of music the Hardy Boys would wear. Jeff is a huge influence on the style of wrestling that came after he debuted. And, the style of tag team wrestling that the Hardy Boys brought completely changed the whole landscape of wrestling. So yes, Hardys would have to go forward. And that one, I think what kind of match it would be is going to be your bruisers against your perennial babyface high flyers. And I could see the Bar shutting them down quickly up top with some of their stuff, but then having the Hardys fight back and hit them with the beautiful stuff, a little bit of heat, and I think that it would have been a great match. And it was a great match. They had a few different ones. I remember specifically a cage match they had with the Hardy Boys on Raw that was really, really good. But yeah, that would have been the two at their peak would have been incredible. But yes, Hardy
this is one of the few matchups that we actually saw, like in all these brackets, like the next one is Buckwinkle Stevens versus Hall and Nash. We didn't get to see that match, but we saw Hardys versus the Bar. Buckwinkle and Stevens, of course, you said earlier, not a lot of footage, but if you ask someone like Meltzer or Cornette, they're like, oh my God, they're it. They're number one. Hall and Nash as a tag team not only created the NWO, but were dominant. We're a dominant tag team, really going through tag teams like, the Faces of Fear, like you said before, the Steiners, Harlem Heat, a very competitive division, and they were going through it.
Yeah, for sure. And they were a team from 96 until 98. And they were on top of that division in WCW, almost the whole time then. The money drawn by those guys and Hogan as well, but those guys cannot be denied. And they completely changed the landscape of wrestling. They changed the landscape of wrestling for the wrestler, but also as what could be presented as a heel. They were completely different. Their matches may not have been what a lot of people consider 5-star matches, but the money that was drawn, how they changed the business cannot be denied. But from all the things I've read, all the articles I've read, all the stories that I've heard, the style of wrestling that Stevens and Buckwinkle. There was a bit more footage with Stevens and Buckwinkle than Patterson and Stevens, but Stevens and Buckwinkle, dude, I'm gonna have to, if it were Patterson and Stevens, which is what I thought, man, I'm gonna have to go with Hall and Nash on this.
Hall and Nash over Buckwinkle and Stevens. Of course, you can send all your hate tweets to John Alba at
yes, please. Yeah. I'm sure he'll retweet it too.
So the next matchup are the Funks. I'm assuming Dory Jr. and Terry together versus the Nasty Boys. First of all, bro, what kind of match would that be? My God in heaven.
Yeah, well, we saw a little bit of that in WCW around 94 when it was Bunkhouse Buck and Terry Funk with the Nasties, but it would have been a hell of a brawl, dude. You probably could go back and watch the Funks versus Hanson and Brody and kind of see what would happen. Man, this is a hard one. This is a hard one, dude. I mean, everyone has the ultimate respect for Terry and and Dory as wrestlers.
Here's the thing: a lot of people shitting on the Nasty Boys online when you put up these brackets. And can you make the case for the Nasty Boys? Because I'm like, bro, just watch their match with the Steiners at which was it?
Halloween Havoc.
Halloween Havoc. Oh my God, dude, crazy. The Nasties in their prime were great,
dude. And here's the thing: is like the people that were shitting on the Nasty Boys are people who all they care about is in-ring work. And look, there's not too many people who love in-ring work, good in-ring work more than me. There's way more to it than that. The Nasties had the promo, they had the look, they had the gimmick, and they also had the in-ring work. So you talk about the match with the Steiner Brothers. Yes, incredible match. But also think about WrestleMania 7 with the Hart Foundation. That was a fucking hell of a match. They had incredible matches with the Rockers. There's one at Royal Albert Hall. I think that's right with the Rockers. There's also one from MSG with the Rockers. That's incredible. They're both incredible. They had
Max Payne and Cactus Jack.
Yep. Spring Stampede 94, I believe.
My
is what
God.
It was. They had a Halloween Havoc 1993. Go back and watch this one, dude, with Too Cold Scorpio and Marcus Bagwell. A hell of a match. Halloween Havoc 1993. That was a great match. Going back to the AWA days, they had some great matches with the Rockers too. So in-ring work is there. Just because they don't do headlock takeovers and scissors locks and dives over the top doesn't mean they couldn't work. They were really good workers, but they also had money drawing feuds. They had an incredible gimmick. Their style of wrestling was one that wasn't typical at the time. But all that being said, the Funks drew a shit ton of money in Amarillo and in Japan. I mean, Japan it can't be taken lightly as far as what they did. Their feud with the Briscoes drew a ton of money. Their matches were incredible. Like I said earlier with a Hanson and Brody, they had some great matches with, oh my God, who did I just watch the other day? Snuka and Brody, great matches there too. But man, they had a long ass run in Japan. So as much as I love the Nasty Boys, I'm going to have to put the Funks above the Nasty Boys here.
Yeah, you kind of have to. And, just the fact of back in the day, you had three for sure, just thriving territories in Texas, in Amarillo. That was Funk territory. That was where they really, just when you can set your flag on just a couple guys like that, you have to give that respect. Plus the Japanese stuff. This might be the most fun matchup coming up. The New Day versus Los Gringos Locos. Man, I'm gonna pay money to see that match.
Yes, for sure. I mean, Los Gringos Locos, two incredible athletes in the ring, two incredible professional wrestlers, two incredible entertaining entities. And dude, if they were together for longer, they probably would be considered the greatest tag team of all time. Maybe, you know what I mean? They would have been Midnight Express-ish, I think the plan was for them to come to America, and then unfortunately Art Barr passed away. But what a team they were, dude. Obviously, there's a 2 out of 3 falls match that everyone talks about, title versus hairs, or was it career versus hairs? I'm sorry, career versus hair. But that match was incredible. I've got a whole, I think it's like nine discs of the greatest Los Gringos Locos. They had some great 6-man tags as well, and they drew a shit ton of money in Mexico. But the only thing is they didn't do it for a very long period of time. You know what I mean? They weren't together for a long period of time. The New Day
did, yeah.
Oh, yeah. They've been together since 2015, right?
It's been a while.
Yeah, and they just until recently held the record for longest reigning tag team champions in WWE history. They've had incredible matches. Obviously, they've got the charisma. Obviously, they've got the look. Obviously, they've got the verbal ability, and all that compiled with in-ring. You can't take it away. They've drawn money. They've had some money feuds. So I'm going to say this match would have been fun. Would have been very athletic. But the New Day they've meant more to our business than Los Gringos Locos.
So that now we have some second round matchups of the New Day against the Funks and Hall and Nash versus the Hardy Boys. But moving on to the first round, I think this is a quick one. Heart Foundation versus the Smoking Guns. But I think we can say, like, the Smoking Guns belong on this list. They were big, mobile, charismatic guys WWE did not know what to do with. They threw them a tag team. They made the most of it. They were a fun tag team.
Absolutely. And also, this is a time, in 1992 to 1996 is a time that they completely carried the tag division. WWE did not give a shit about tag teams. Still don't.
Right.
But they did not care about the tag team division, and it wasn't a stacked tag team division, but the Smoking Guns really carried that. Also, they were, if you watch their matches, dude, obviously everyone knows how great Billy is, but Bart too, their matches were incredible. They had great tandem offense. They interwove the opponents into their offense as well, and made for an exciting all-around match. They had some great matches with Bob Holly and 1-2-3 Kid. They had some, they had the match with Yokozuna and Owen Hart at WrestleMania 11. They had some great matches with 1-2-3 Kid and Razor Ramon as well.
The Godwins, the Body Donnas, a lot of stuff going on
Body
there.
Donnas, yes, especially when they turned heel. That's when they started hitting their stride, is when they turned heel with Sonny. They completely changed. And I think if they ran with them for a little bit longer, we'd be talking about them in a different light. But the Heavenly Bodies, they had great matches there with those guys, and they're 3-time World Tag Team Champions. So they absolutely belong on the list. However, unfortunately, they're facing one of the greatest of all time who may win this tournament. Who knows? The Hart Foundation, Brett and Jim, completely changed, obviously, tag team wrestling, especially in the WWE. When you think about this, dude, they're 2-time tag team champions, right? Featured in a lot of money drawing feuds, featured as a tag team at a time when WWE had teams like the Rockers, like the Brainbusters, the British Bulldogs, Strike Force, the Nasty Boys, the Bolsheviks, the Conquistadors, the Killer Bees, oh my God, help me out here, Rhythm and Blues. LOD,
team, all them, yeah.
I'm saying Demolition. They had all these teams, and the Hart Foundation worked with every single one of them. So you combine all of that, dude, they could go on to win this whole thing on my bracket. I don't know, maybe yours too, but yes, Hart Foundation for sure.
I don't know. I might have spoken too soon when I said the most fun match. A little confusion happened online when someone said we had the Briscoes twice.
Yeah.
We have the Shield versus the Briscoe brothers, Jack and Jerry. Now, of course, Jack and Jerry, you might know, Jack, NWA World Champion, Jerry of Gerald and Pat, but they both have massive amateur credentials. And I would argue we're kind of the precursor to the Rockers with their tandem. They would do tandem leapfrogs and tandem drop kicks and tandem figure fours and kind of a lot of synchronized stuff. And their stuff with Adonis and Murdoch was a great feud and one of the first tag team feuds of my life watching. Briscoe Brothers versus the Shield. What do you think?
So the Shield, if they were presented as just a tag team, maybe could have been higher on the list. The Shield was a dominant force in WWE for a long period of time. They also carried the tag division as well during a time when WWE didn't really respect the tag division too much. They're champions.
Recurring theme.
Yeah.
Evergreen.
But Jack and Jerry, man, longevity, again, changing the course of tag team wrestling, changing the style of tag team wrestling, or adapting the style to whatever era they were in. When they were working with the Funks, it was a completely different style than when they were working with and had a huge money drawing feud with Youngblood and Steamboat.
Yeah.
And had completely different matches with Steamboat and Youngblood than they did with the Funks, and then completely different matches from both of those than they did with, like you said, Adonis and Murdoch and WWF. So they had some money drawing feuds. Brother tag team, both incredible amateur wrestlers. So I'm going to have to say both great baby faces and heels. I'm going to have to say the Briscoe brothers in this
one. Agree. The Shield, of course, no one can dispute what they've done since, but the tag team of Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns were presented as part of a larger thing and weren't dominant the way the New Day were, I don't think. I think this tag team match may have happened. Steiners versus the Fantastics. That had to happen at some point, right?
No, I don't think so. Because
really, when Fantastics came back to WCW later on, Steiners were both baby faces. They didn't
like maybe in '96. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. Like maybe something, you know?
Yeah, but Fantastics were completely out of their. I say this with respect, but they were out of their peak by then. But this is a match I'm heartbroken about because obviously I got to choose the Steiners in this match. But the Fantastics are the most underrated tag team of all time. Nobody else comes close. They're guys who had incredible tag team matches with the Midnight Express. They had incredible tag team matches, with Joe and Dean Malenko over in Japan, with Joe Malenko and Kabashi as well. They had great matches with the Bulldogs too in Japan. But the only thing is they followed the Rock and Rolls everywhere they went. So they never got to have the money drawing feuds that the Rock and Rolls did. They were in the feuds, but they didn't draw the money that the Rock and Rolls did because the Rock and Rolls were so over everywhere they went. And they didn't have the opportunity to draw the feud or draw the money and have the feuds the Rock and Rolls did. Their style of wrestling was so beautiful. There aren't too many tag teams. I think as a working tag team, right? I think they are better than the Rock and Roll Express as a working tag team. Rock and Roll Express understood their gimmick, understood their roles. Ricky, who is the greatest seller of all time, Ricky Morton, greatest seller of all time, came in there. They had great matches too, and they always could have great matches, but they knew their money was Ricky selling, Robert getting the hot tag. The Fantastics were being presented as these guys who had flashy moves, flashy gear, and they were doing these double team tandem offense things, and that's kind of what their gimmick was to be just flashy wrestlers. So as an in-ring working tag team, even though Ricky and Robert probably could have been better as far as like quality of matches, as you saw later in their careers during the 90s in NWA, WCW, when they were trying to steal the show, they at their peak, when they were drawing their money, they knew Ricky just had to take the heat. Robert got the hot tag. And they just battled from underneath the whole match. But as a working team, I'm so sad to see the Fantastics go because I love their matches. They, like I said, great matches with the Midnight Express. I think the matches in the ring with the Midnights were better than the ones with the Rock and Rolls as well. But with the Rock and Rolls, they drew way more money. But yeah, Steiners, they blew the roof off. Off of tag team wrestling. They took over tag team wrestling in the United States and in Japan too. Incredible matches, great presence, great aura about them, completely different than anybody else. Brother tag team, multi-time tag team champions, IWGP tag team champions, WWF tag team champions, WCW, NWA tag team champions. So there's no denying that the Steiners could win this tournament. They're going to go forward.
I don't think enough is talked about how Scott Steiner is a revolutionary wrestler.
Yeah.
Like a big guy doing Hurricane Ranas, and he kind of invented the 450 splash, and like all kinds of stuff. Like having the fact that Rick Steiner, by the way, Rick Steiner and Sting tagged against the Fantastics at a point, but I don't think there was ever a Steiners Fantastics match. But man, when Scotty put it together with Rick, I don't know how anybody beats those guys. The next one is going to be a brouhaha, beer money, which is of course James Storm, underrated wrestler, and Bobby Roode, another underrated wrestler, underrated tag team, but they're facing the Vegematic of Brody and Hanson. Yeah. Man, I don't know. That's just get out of the way, guys. That's gonna be a crazy one.
Yeah, I feel bad too because a huge fan of Beer Money, and I think there was a time when when they were working in TNA that they did change change the course of tag team wrestling for a heel tag team, because up until that point the tag teams, especially the heel tag teams, were just working to get their shit in. Even afterwards too, there was a lot like that. But these guys were working for the match. An incredible tag team, one of the best working tag teams I've ever seen. However, their run was just in TNA. And even though TNA gets a lot of flack for what they were and or what they presented, they did some really great stuff. It just came at a time where wrestling wasn't super popular. And with Beer Money being stuck in TNA, not really having the opportunity to draw money or go to WWE or even go to New Japan or,
Right.
or Mexico to see if they could be successful. They stayed there. And even though they stayed there, they were incredible. However, Brody and Hanson, again, changed the mindset of professional wrestling, but also monster tag teams. They were two huge burly guys, drew a shit ton of money in Japan. And I think that I'm not being disrespectful when I say they were more of an influence than Beer Money. As much as I hate to say that, Beer Money is one of my dream opponents, but Brody and Hanson have to move forward.
This is going to be so fun, guys, because as the brackets get smaller and smaller, Dax is going to be more and more tortured. This is going to be so fun to see, because you're talking about like he's got to like run into Bobby Roode one day, and Bobby Roode's going to be like, first round, huh? Yeah, okay, all right.
Well, I'll run into some people that I work with now. You know what I mean?
Well, we're going to talk about them in a second. You already talked about the Rock and Roll Express against Eminem. Eminem, man, they really had it all together. Like that was a tag team WWE needed at the time. But Rock and Roll Express, all those territories, drew money everywhere. Teams like the Fantastics could just follow them and pick up the same feuds and draw money because of what the Rock and Roll Express did. You really can't, when you talk about feuds, longevity, money, a good time, Ricky Morton's a great time, like you can't beat it.
Yeah, and we've talked about changing the course of wrestling or changing the course of tag team wrestling. Nobody did it more than the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express. They completely changed the landscape, not just of a feud, a money-drawing feud, but the style of tag team wrestling, what it is, what it means to get a hot tag, what a fiery comeback is, how to get heat, how important it is to get heat as well. But I could go on and on about Rock and Roll Express, but we'll have an opportunity to do that because they will be here for a long time in this tournament. But I want to talk about Eminem, Joey Mercury, and Johnny Nitro, dude. They were and with Melina as well. I don't want to leave her out. What a great package, especially in the time when WWE needed a tag team like that. And they were together for quite a while too, from like 2005 until about 2008. And they were the tag team champions. I think 3-time tag team champions. They worked like heels, a heel tag team, a great well-oiled machine heel tag team, knew how to get heat. That's all from Joey Mercury because he is so smart in this business. There's not too many people I've met that are smarter than him. Eminem also got an opportunity to work with people like Paul London and Brian Kendrick, who could have probably been on this list as well, but they worked with them for the tag team belts, but also got to work main event feuds with Eddie Guerrero and Batista, and also Batista and Rey Mysterio. So they got to be in these money drawing feuds and these main event angles with people who were at the time world heavyweight champions. So that's why they're on this tournament. That's why they're in this tournament. It's just unfortunate they have to work with possibly the greatest tag team of all time, Rock and Roll Express, but we're going to send Rock and Roll straight.
That sounds like the right move. All right, so our next match might be the show stealer. Like, a matchup you don't think about because maybe they're not the hugest names to you, but man, is there going to be a more fun match than the Wild Samoans versus the American Wolves? My God, Afa and Sika, Davey Richards, Eddie Edwards. I'm buying a ticket for that.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be a big fight because Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards, they don't back down, dude. And the Wild Samoans just beat the shit out of you for real and in the ring. However, I'm a huge fan of the American Wolves. big fan. I also think they had a hand in kind of changing the dynamic of tag team wrestling at one point or another. Maybe not in a mainstream level because they were with Ring of Honor for most of their careers and a little bit of TNA too. But, they never got the opportunity. Unfortunately, they never got the opportunity to draw the money that Wild Samoans did. Plus, Wild Samoans, they came at a time when not every tag team, was a team that looked alike or dressed alike. And they were huge guys, drew a shit ton of money in New York.
Longevity too. Like
longevity.
They would just keep dropping the titles back to them. They would have feuds with whoever came in, like 70s through the 80s, like huge team.
Yep. So we're going to have to go with the Wild Samoans here for this one, even though I love Davey and I love Eddie Edwards, and I think they're incredible. We had a match with them in West Virginia for ASW, 20-something minutes long, and it was a great match. So those guys could still go. I just wish they had the opportunity to do it on a mainstream television show.
Yeah, it is a shame, but fans know how good they were and are. The Andersons, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew as a whole, Ole, Gene, Arn, against the world's greatest tag team. And I think really almost any iteration of the Andersons, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, you have to say had a bigger influence, a bit longevity over the world's greatest tag team, which was an insanely good tag team. I think they were part of, that SmackDown 6 era and of where you had all these great tag teams wrestling on SmackDown. How would you compare the two?
Yeah. So world's greatest tag team, great tag team. They got to also be with Angle for Team Angle, had a couple of decent feuds as well. Great tandem offense, great in-ring work. But as far as tag team wrestling goes, you don't get too much better than the Minnesota Wrecking Crew. Whether we're talking about Lars and Gene, we're talking about Gene and Ole, or we're talking about Ole and Arn. Those guys changed the course of how a tag team match was structured. They would, Gene and then Ole, and then later on Arn and Ole. Gene and Ole would wear down a body part, and have that baby face desperately reach for the tag, and they would just keep working that body part till finally the fresh baby face got in and blew a freaking comeback, that rivaled nothing else. But they also made everybody fight too. Drew a ton of money, like I've said a million times, but they really did. They drew a lot of money in Georgia, and later on they did it in Crockett. So obviously we're going to have to go with the Andersons here.
And created the legacy of Arn Anderson as well, who came in to the established act that had not been wrestling for a while, but the act was so well regarded that when Arn came in, boom, Minnesota Wrecking Crew were back. We now have a sports entertainment masterclass. And that's not said disparagingly because these guys all drew money. The Young Bucks against the first tag team champions of my life, the Soul Patrol. Wow. Yeah. They said, me and Rocky going all the way. I remember that as a little kid. I used to say it to my friends, me and Rocky going all the way. Tony Atlas. I'm sorry. I can't laugh. I met Tony Atlas at WrestleCade when I was there with you. And he invited me to sit down next to him. We talked to him. All I could think about was the feet thing, man. Like I could not do anything. Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas against the Young Bucks. The Soul Patrol had a short run, but they were kind of the bridge between a few other tag teams. Really great tag team against the Bucks.
Yeah. So Soul Patrol, they, like you said, they worked together for a very short period of time. Two incredible baby faces, dude. Rocky Johnson, what great punches, what great footwork as well. Incredible selling, an incredible athlete, great promo. So Rocky, as a standalone wrestler, probably could have been a much bigger star. However, he had this opportunity with Tony Atlas. They became the first ever African-American World Tag Team Champions in WWE, WWF at the time. Right? Was it WWF?
WWF, not the three W's. It was just the WWF. But your point about Rocky is true. I remember as a kid being drawn to this guy by what he did in the ring. He was so charismatic. not necessarily with the promos or whatever, but just the way he wrestled, just like the way he would get the crowd involved, the way he would dance around, and the way he'd hit those drop kicks. Dude, The Rock got that stuff naturally in a lot of ways through his dad. Like, his dad was amazing. And Tony Atlas was a guy who wrestled all the territories, could always be a big name because he looked like a freak.
Yeah, especially at the time, there were not very many people that looked like him, especially in the wrestling business. However, you got the Young Bucks on the other side. And regardless how we feel about each other personally, I can't deny the fact that they revolutionized our industry, especially for tag team wrestling. There's a lot of people, a lot of copycats that came after them that can't do the style the way that they do this, the way they do the style. Not necessarily the way, Cash and I didn't really follow that suit and didn't necessarily work their style, but that doesn't mean their style is wrong or our style is wrong. It just means they had their own style. It worked great for them. It still is working great for them. They've been a team for, my God, man, 15 years or something like that. They've been a team for a long, long time. They traveled the world too, Japan, Mexico, the US, all around the US, and everywhere they went, whether it was for a small wrestling company or it was for New Japan, they drew money. And
they turned down WWE contracts when they weren't even big stars yet because they believed in themselves, and they also did All In. Like, when you talk about All In, like that's enough to get anybody past the first round. When you talk about filling a building based on your names,
right, for sure. They are in the conversation, obviously, for one of the greatest tag teams of all time. So they're going to move forward in this one with the Soul Patrol. And I hopefully maybe before April or later on down the line, we have match 3 with those guys. I would love that. But yes, Young Bucks.
We'd love to see that. Man, this match is a damn shame right here. This match is a damn shame. My favorite tag team of my youth, the British Bulldogs. Like, I never seen any shit like that in my life. Like, Bob Orton would win matches with a superplex. All of a sudden, you got Dynamite going off the top rope with superplexes. And these guys, the British Bulldogs, amazing, taking on the Hollywood Blondes. 2 guys WCW didn't care about, threw together. And my goodness, what they did still lives on. Hollywood Blondes versus British Bulldogs. What do you think?
So far, this is the matchup. This is the matchup that would steal any show. I hate it because Hollywood Blondes is one of my favorite tag teams of all time. I have a 3-disc set. Sorry. I've got a 5-disc set of the Hollywood Blondes and their greatest matches. However, they were only a team for about a year, maybe a little bit less than a year. But they were carrying tag team wrestling in WCW at a time. They got to work main event angles. They had belts, I think, twice. They got to work with and have money drawing feuds with Steamboat and Douglas, Flair and Arn. They went on to they had a little mini feud with Ron Simmons and Too Cold Scorpio. So they did a lot of incredible stuff, dude. However, they're going against the Bulldogs, who their effect on tag team wrestling is being felt right now, today. Drew a ton of money in WWF and in Japan as well. Over in Canada too for a bit. They changed professional wrestling, honestly, as well as tag team wrestling, but they changed the course of professional wrestling, won championships in Japan, won the WWF tag team championships, money drawing feuds with the Hart Foundation, the Dream Team, over in Japan. In All Japan, they had some stuff with the Malenkos. Before that, in New Japan, they were working with the top guys from Fujinami and my God, I cannot believe I'm forgetting. This is just slipping my mind because I'm talking so fast. He just passed away and he founded New Japan. Oh my God.
Inoki?
Inoki, please edit that.
Oh my
I just couldn't think of his name, but Inoki and Fujinami, they got to work with everybody, and everybody wanted to work with them. My only regret is they had one match with Arn and Tully that wasn't televised, and I wish I could see it. That's the match. That's my dream tag team match right there is the Bulldogs and Arn and Tully. So, yes, unfortunately, I love the Hollywood Blondes, but the Bulldogs got to move on.
We have the Rockers, the Midnight Rockers, or the Rockers, against the Kings of Wrestling, which, if you don't know, is Claudio Castagnoli and Chris Hero. And it's kind of like what you said about beer money. When you have this team that lives in this bubble, you got to give credit to Tony Khan. Like Tony Khan does it. John Moxley's wrestling damn GCW. You guys are doing IWGP and you're doing AAA, and poor Claudio and Chris Hero, this great tag team whose years were in Ring of Honor, where a lot of people, myself included, as a big Chris Hero fan, didn't get to watch.
Yep. Claudio and Hero, I've seen their matches with the Briscoes. I've seen their matches with the World's Greatest Tag Team. Incredible stuff. They were a great tag team. Cornette has compared them to the Midnight Express. You don't get higher praise than that in tag team wrestling. But like you said, they were in this wrestling bubble in Ring of Honor, and that's really the only place they ventured around in was in Ring of Honor. So going against the Rockers, someone who worked in Memphis, someone who worked in AWA, worked in WWF, and revolutionized the style of wrestling, but by their look, but also their in-ring work. The Rockers have got to move forward in this one.
And guys, if you have never seen the Midnight Rockers versus Playboy Buddy Rose and Doug Summers, you need to watch that match. It'll remind you a lot of a match or two you saw the other night. A lot of blood, a lot of blood. The Assassins versus Gallows and Anderson. You said yourself, Assassins, pretty much regarded as one of the greatest tag teams of all time. Under my radar for sure. I don't claim to be a historian, but Gallows and Anderson, they've, from what they did in New Japan, back to WWE, left WWE, did the circuit, dominant, really good pairing, individually, collectively. Gallows and Anderson, a great team.
Yeah, Gallows and Anderson are the reason, not the sole reason, but a big part of the reason that New Japan took back off and independent wrestling shot through the roof. They're the creators of the Bullet Club, and there have been a lot of copycat wrestlers. Trust me, I saw a lot of them when I was on the Indies who wanted to be the Bullet Club. So they, I think 3-time IWGP Tag Team Champions. Could be wrong about that. Maybe it's 2. But IWGP Tag Team Champions. I also think they were 2-time Raw Tag Team Champions. Because they beat us. So I know that for sure. But yeah, man, they drew money in Japan, drew money in these on independent circuit as well, changed the course of independent wrestling and helped change New Japan's business too. But the Assassins, I haven't seen too much of their stuff. I've seen some of the matches with Gino and Tully, which was incredible. I've seen some of the clips of things that they would do, but apparently from what I understand, they were the quintessential heel tag team. And at the time they were sneaky and got heat at the right time. They didn't claim to be badasses, but when the time came, they could be badasses. Masked tag team as well, which was revolutionary at the time. So everything I understand, all the research I've done and the people that I've, believe the Assassins one of the greatest ever. So I'm gonna have to put the Assassins.
And here's a matchup. I don't know if we ever got it, but they kind of were in the same areas at the same time. Miracle Violence Connection against Muto and how do you pronounce Hase?
Hase, yep.
Hase. All Japan, all over Japan. Miracle Violence Connection. Man, talk about them a little bit.
So Miracle Violence Connection was Dr. Death, Steve Williams, and Terry Bam Bam Gordy, a team that I admire. I love. An incredible tag team, drew a ton of money in Japan, also came over to WCW for a stint, drew some money with the Steiners. and had a couple of months here in WCW. But the time they had in WCW, they made a huge impact on the U.S. audience as well. They were in All Japan. Muda and Hase were in New Japan, so those two never crossed paths. And Muda and Hase, again, New Japan wasn't known for the tag team wrestling, especially at the time. But Muda and Hase were a money drawing tag team, had incredible matches with Bam Bam and Vader. If you haven't seen those matches, please go back and watch those tag team matches. But as far as tag team wrestling goes, Miracle Violence Connection, MVC, Dr. Death, and Terry Gordy, they're going to move on because of their influence on the business, the matches they had, and again, longevity too. They were a lot longer than Muda and Hase.
We've gone through our second bracket. We might try to get through the third and fourth if we can, maybe a little quicker. We spent a lot of time in depth. We'll go in depth next time on the next brackets. LOD versus Santana Ortiz / LAX.
Yep, love Santana and Ortiz. Unfortunately, they had a short stint in AEW. Other than that, they were in Impact Wrestling. But they were a team for a very long time. Had some incredible matches. We had some incredible matches with them. I love them so much as a team, as individuals. But God dang, dude, it's Legion of Doom. Come on, it's the
even they would say, come on, what I'm saying? The Road Warriors, Legion of Doom, move on. Lucha Brothers versus DX. Now, as I understand it, this is the DX that has Shawn Michaels and Triple H as a tag team.
Yeah. So again, that's a revisionist history kind of thing with WWE. However, they were a tag team for a long period of time. Obviously later on in their career, they were a team, a bit too in the inception of DX, but more so later on. They became tag team champions too, worked with some tag teams, obviously money drawing feuds. But I'm going to have to go with Lucha Bros, who have traveled the world. They've changed the style of tag team wrestling, or they have a style of tag team wrestling that a lot of people try to copy, that a lot of people want to do, but can't do it correctly. They look the part, they dress the part. They have this, especially Penta, they have this like unspeakable kind of, you don't understand how or why, but charisma that just oozes from both of them, but especially Penta. And they're not done. They've got a lot more to go. So this may ruffle some feathers, but please go back and read the research on DX and tag team wrestling. Obviously, we're not talking about Triple H and Shawn Michaels as individuals. I think Lucha Bros move on forward.
Demolition versus Red Dragon, O'Reilly and Fish. No disrespect here either, but because Undisputed Era, all the stuff they did is great, but you can't dispute Demolition, who shook off the chains of being LOD ripoffs to become a very established legendary tag team.
Right, dude. Demolition up until New Day broke the record, and more recently the Usos, they were the longest reigning tag team champions, 3-time tag team champions, money drawing feuds with the Hart Foundation, Legion of Doom later on in their careers. Before that, Haku and the Barbarian, and Strike Force as well. The Brain Busters, a huge money drawing feud there. Great matches too. Incredible in-ring workers. A lot of fans, especially newer fans, may not correlate the two, Demolition and great workers, but dude, especially, both of them, don't get me wrong, but especially Bill Eadie. What a worker. When he became Axe, he just became this meat chopping badass, but he still was a great in-ring worker. But if you look at his Mass Superstar run, he could do anything, dude.
For sure.
So, as much as I love Red Dragon, I think they're a great tag team. They never had the opportunity to shine on mainstream television, mainstream wrestling. I know they were with NXT, but at the time NXT wasn't mainstream. They finally got the chance, or finally would have had the chance, and did have a little bit of an opportunity with AEW, but unfortunately they both got injured. And now Fish is with Impact Wrestling. And, so that's the reason that we're going to send Demolition on to the next round.
Usos versus the Blackjacks.
Blackjack's great in the 70s, dude. Changed changed perception maybe a bit of tag team wrestling in New York. Two guys who looked exactly alike. They looked the part. They dressed the part. Bobby Heenan was their manager. Multi-time tag team champions, drew a shit ton of money. But we are talking about the Usos, who have been a tag team since 2010. Ton of money drawing feuds. Just recently, their biggest money drawing feud, where they're going to be one of the main events in WrestleMania.
It's crazy, yeah.
If they go on last or not. If they're building towards Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens against the Usos, it's going to be one of the main events. Multi-time tag team champions, longest reigning tag team champions in WWE history. Twin brothers, oozing charisma, look the part, dress the part. Incredible in-ring wrestlers. So we're going to send the Usos on.
And as we record, the Usos had one of the best Raw closing segments ever last night with Sami Zayn. So it looks like they're headed in some kind of direction. Good for them. Arn and Tully versus the Quebecers. Quebecers, Rougeau brothers. Are you kind of including them in the same mix, or
no? Because they're different. Yeah, they're different. Right. You even mentioned the Rougeaus to me that you thought maybe they should be in here. Yeah. However, the Rougeaus never were in a money drawing angle. They did have a house show run with Heart Foundation mid 80s. And then later on, they had a house show run with the Rockers. But other than that, never really a money drawing feud. They were a great act. Don't get me wrong, especially as they turned, as they became heels and they were quote unquote pro America. Great gimmick. Never held a tag team championship, never were put in a position to be in a money drawing feud. Quebecers came at a time when WWF needed tag team wrestling. 3-time tag team champions, looked the part. As the Quebecers, they had the charisma, great in-ring work as well. Money drawing feuds with the Heart Foundation, the Steiners, 1, 2, 3 Kid and Marty Jannetty. So that's why they're here. However, again, Arn and Tully, the first ever tag team to hold NWA and WWF tag team championships. Their wrestling, their matches, their angles, their style of tag team wrestling is being felt today. We have stolen so much stuff from them. Many tag teams have. Ultimate bad guy tag team. Great in-ring work. Both incredible talkers. Again, look the part, dress the part. So Arn and Tully moving forward. No surprise there.
And despite what Bruce Pritchard said, they drew money.
Yes. Yeah. God, what an idiot. Sorry,
happy birthday, Bruce. Motor City Machine Guns versus the fabulous Freebirds. Those Freebirds, they were a favorite of mine growing up. Just that they had the sports entertainment thing down, and then Buddy could get beat up by anybody, look great, and Terry Gordy just amazing in the ring.
Right. So this is where I'm going to get a lot of heat, okay? Because this is, you're probably going to be surprised, but I'm sending Motor City Machine Guns through. Reason being, we're talking about tag team wrestling here. We're not talking about angles, or we're not talking about 6-man tags or who is the greatest faction of all time. If we were talking about that, Fabulous Freebirds may be on the Mount Rushmore of greatest factions of all time. They drew a shit ton of money, but never as a tag team. As a unit, they did. They changed the business with the music videos and coming out to music and the way they dressed and how they carried themselves, the promo. But they did that as a faction, not as a tag team. Never did they hold. I mean, you could say
Garvin and Hayes later on.
Garvin and Hayes, but to me, my opinion, that's not the Freebirds. And they didn't hold the belts very long. They weren't great tag team champions. And that was the latter part of their peak, their in-ring peak too. Motor City Machine Guns, the reason they're the reason I think the Young Bucks would probably say this too. The reason there are the Young Bucks is because of Motor City Machine Guns. Tandem offense, no one gets better than they do. Fast-paced matches, they unfortunately they only got seen mainstream in America for TNA, but they did travel to Ring of Honor. They did travel to TNA. They went to Mexico. They've gone to Japan. They've won belts everywhere they've gone, and their influence is felt right now, today. You know, them saying that. So that's why I will send them on in the tag team tournament.
And I think Alex Shelley's great, but Chris Sabin is one of the great what ifs in the history of wrestling.
Yeah.
If he didn't get the injuries he did. Fabulous Kangaroos versus the Golden Lovers, one of the greatest feuds in the history of wrestling. Really think about it. I have no knowledge of either one of these teams much. I know a little bit about the Golden Lovers, but I'd say the Fabulous Kangaroos were dominant for a long time, right?
Yep. So the Fabulous Kangaroos were from Australia. They had a manager as well. They were a complete package. They had these what are the gimmicks where you throw them and they come back to you? What are they called? You know what I'm talking about? Boomerang. Yeah. They had these little boomerang gimmicks, and they were a great heel tag team from what I understand. Sorry, D. My brain just doesn't work ever. CTE. There we go. I'm just kidding. Relax. Golden Lovers. I don't know too much about them, but I do know apparently they had incredible matches in Japan. They were together for quite a while. They made
quite a story and quite an angle as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Had a huge impact in Japan, but they're facing what tag team wrestling is based off of, and that's the Fabulous Kangaroos. So the Kangaroos are going forward here.
And our headline match for this bracket, the Briscoes, Jay and Mark against Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood. Wow. The ultimate, this is really the ultimate match right here. What a match this would be.
Yeah, for sure. The dream match. Briscoes were a team for 20 years, and they went all over the world, and they won belts all over the world. Ushered in a new style of tag team wrestling, made you believe that they were badasses. And thankfully, calm down. All right. And thankfully, actually, I just got a text from Mark this morning to me and Cash. Well, it was from last night, but my old ass was asleep. And he sent us this incredible text message. And they talk back and forth because they're not old ass people like me. But I just woke up this morning and checked my phone and saw the messages of love and respect they were sending back and talking about Jay. And it was great to wake up to that. But I think the feud the Briscoes will always be remembered for, so will we, is going to be FTR Briscoes. And it drew money, maybe not WWF money, you know what I mean? But as we've talked about, Supercard of Honor, when that match was announced, tickets shot through the roof, buy rate shot through the roof. Same thing with, we set a record for Ring of Honor with the 2 out of 3 falls match at Death Before Dishonor, ticket sales and pay-per-view buys there. When that match was announced, shot through the roof again. The dog collar match, again, helped sell a shit ton of pay-per-views for Ring of Honor, shit ton of seats. And also is critically acclaimed as one of the greatest tag matches of all time. I'm fortunate to say that. I'm not saying that as any kind of egotistical maniac. I'm saying that I'm because I'm proud of it. Steamboat and Youngblood, my biggest dream opponents of all time. That's who I would love for me and Cash to face.
Oh, wow. What a great team they were.
Incredible tag team.
With a great run, like a 4-year super solid in a very competitive area. What a great team.
Drew a shit ton of money with Sarge and Cornoodle. Drew a shit ton of money with the Briscoes. Funny enough,
right,
was here. But a great tag team, incredible babyface tag team, quintessential babyface tag team. Before Rock and Roll Express came along, they were the best tag team, especially in the ring, and maybe the best still in the ring of all time. But their matches were phenomenal. They went to Japan too and did pretty well in Japan. But longevity, influence on the business, matches, charisma, money drawn, at least in the parameters they had. the Briscoes. They traveled the world, went to Japan, won championships there, Ring of Honor. They won championships in Impact Wrestling. If things could have been better, they would have been champions in AEW and WWE too. If things could have worked themselves out. I'm going to send the Briscoes forward in this one.
All right. We are out of our third bracket. I guess we'll do a little rapid fire to finish the fourth bracket so that we can finish out on time. Otherwise, we'll have to do like the WWE does when they do the draft and just announce it on the website. And I don't want to do that. So Midnight Express against Doom. We have to send Midnight Express through, correct?
Unfortunately, I can't take time to talk about Midnight Express, but we will have this whole tournament to talk about Midnight Express. I promise. Greatest tag team of all time. Changed the style of tag team wrestling. Dennis Condrey, the most underrated wrestler of all time for a long time. Bobby Eaton was. Cornette, maybe the best talker of all time. What a package they were. Midnight Express going through.
And the Valiant Brothers versus the Eliminators. Eliminators in the ECW bubble. Valiant Brothers dominant in WWE, WWF at the time.
Yes. Unfortunately, Eliminators, like you said, were in the ECW bubble. They did change they did bring in a style of tag team wrestling that had been adopted after they left. But if we're talking money, drone, charisma, maybe not the greatest in-ring, quote unquote, in-ring workers of all time, but the Valiant Brothers, they mean a lot to tag team wrestling. Do your research and you'll see. That's why I'm moving the Valiant Brothers forward.
And the next matchup on our fourth and final bracket is the Holy Demon Army against a tag team that got a little bit of flack from what we put up, the Bushwhackers, but the Sheepherders kicked ass, y'all. Like, check out some Sheepherder shit, because that is not the Bushwhackers.
If people gave Bushwhackers shit, it was because they didn't do their research or don't know the history. The Kiwis and Stampede Wrestling and from Australia drew a shit ton of money, had great matches. Sheepherders, I think, I could be wrong, but Dave Meltzer's 5-star scale, they were the first tag team with the Fantastics to get a 5-star match. I think, I could be wrong. But the Sheepherders drew a ton of money for Mid-South and went to Crockett as well and drew some money there. Drew decent money, but were a huge act in WWF. Not very many tag team championships between them, but they are facing Holy Demon Army. And listen, this is going to get a lot of flack. I think Holy Demon Army, great workers, great wrestlers. But as far as a tag team goes, because some people said they should have been number one seed. As far as a tag team goes, they didn't have a huge array of opponents. They faced the same guys, a combination of the same guys for a lot of times. But I will see it send Holy Demon Army on.
I'm assuming Edge and Christian over Money Inc.
Yeah, that should be a close one, but Money Inc. wasn't a team for very long, maybe a year or so. Edge and Christian obviously introduced TLC, had incredible careers, drew a ton of money as a team, as individuals. So it could go either way, but I'll send ENC as well.
Dudley Boys and the Russians, the Koloffs, or with Crusher Khrushchev.
Yep, Dudley Boys, maybe on the Mount Rushmore. It depends on the day of the week for me. IWGP Tag Team Champions, ECW Tag Team Champions, quote unquote WCW Tag Team Champions, and WWF Tag Team Champions. Drew a ton of money in the WWF. Drew money for ECW as well. TNA Tag Team Champions. I don't know if I mentioned IWGP, but yes. So yes, we're going to send the Dudleys through with that.
Harlem Heat against the Fabulous Ones. Don't sleep on the Fabulous Ones. They were a great tag team, but also kind of, a little bit in that Rock and Roll Express, Fantastics kind of afterglow as well. And Stan Lane went on to become part of the greatest tag team of all time too. And Steve Keirn went on to do a lot of things.
Real quick though, they were not in the afterglow of Rock and Roll Express and Memphis.
Oh, they were before.
Rock and Rolls came after. That's the only place Rock and Rolls didn't really get over as much as they had everywhere else. The thing is, Fabulous One stayed in one territory for a little bit of time, drew a ton of money, but however, for tag team wrestling, Harlem Heat's got to go through because of their contributions to the business as a tag team. So we're going to talk
about these winners at another time as well. The Addiction, Kazarian and Daniels, SCU, whatever you want to call them, I guess SU includes Scorpio, but against Patterson and Stevens, of course, if you ask Meltzer, you ask Cornette, you ask old school guys, Patterson and Stevens is it.
Yep, I don't think Addiction will have a problem with me saying that. They had a great run in Ring of Honor, a little in TNA as well, a little bit in AEW, but Patterson and Stevens completely changed the business as far as tag team wrestling goes. And we're going to send them home.
And the Addiction is the only tag team today, guys, that I have played music with.
Wow.
Because I played a gig with Frankie. Frankie plays bass, and he's good. And he's a great guy too. And our final matchup, the New Age Outlaws against Adonis and Murdoch. Now, of course, New Age Outlaws, you know, they fed off of the energy of the larger DX faction. Adonis and Murdoch, big favorite of mine, but short run. Murdoch or Adonis coming off his tag team with Jesse Ventura and Murdoch being Dick Murdoch. Who do you take in that one?
If Dick Murdoch and Adrian Adonis would have stayed together longer, they could have been the greatest tag team of all time. I think one of the greatest outside of Arn and Tully and the Midnights. They're the greatest working heel tag team of all time. They drew a ton of money in Japan, had incredible matches in Japan. Please go watch. Drew a ton of money for WWF, but for a short period of time. But like you said, they weren't together. Longevity wasn't there. New Age Outlaws drew a ton of money. Great team. Incredible tag team, incredible chemistry, incredible charisma, worked together for a long time, multi-time tag team champions, Hall of Famers as well as a team. So they're moving on.
Ultimate talker and worker team, you know, like really, really great team. So that finishes the first round. We got it through. We got all 32 matchups done. Hey guys, speaking of sports and March Madness, the NFL draft is here. And the most exciting prospect is the prospect of being perfectly groomed head to toe with our friends at Manscaped. Manscaped has long had elite downfield play with their lawn. Way to go, Manscaped. That's good. Downfield play with their Lawnmower 4.0. But in 2023, they have the rookie sensation Beard Hedger to ensure the face of your franchise is a pretty one. The 1-2 punch of men's grooming is the best acquisition for any at-home GM. So go to manscaped.com and save some salary cap. With our code FTR, you get 20% off plus free shipping. Now, Dax, you've talked about in the past how you actually were forced to use the down there gimmick for the up there gimmick. But now Manscaped has a new gimmick, the Beard Hedger, to help you with that gimmick.
Absolutely. The Beard Hedger, dude, is probably my favorite grooming device I've ever had because it has the little turning dial gimmick that you don't have to take the guard off. And usually, you know, back in the day before this, I had the old trimmers, and every time, dude, it never failed. Every time I was pushing up on my or grooming my beard, every time it would slip and I'd fuck everything up, dude. And now Manscaped has come up with a way to eliminate that. They've got the dial, and I'm able to completely take care of my face and at the exact same time turn it to about the setting of 8 and groom this beautiful mustache you get to see here. So I love it, man. It's the best, like I said, the best grooming tool I've ever had.
I'll tell you what, it is a powerful piece of work too. And if you're concerned about your face and you're concerned about the sensitivity, these are the guys who pretty much invented ball care. So if it's good enough for your balls, it's certainly good enough for your face. And Manscaped has this product. I'm with you, man. It's like, I hate the old school trimmers because I always make a mistake because I'm stupid. But this one has a guard that goes underneath it too. So not only does the guard, you can actually take the guard off if you want to, but the guard stays on and you just use the dial. But if you accidentally turn one way or the other, you don't screw up everything and then have to get a whole new gimmick like Dax Harwood would have to if he got rid of that. I mean, that mustache, that's your money. That's where the money is, right?
Well, that's the only reason that I've got anything that I've got right now is because of the mustache. The mustache is majestic, and it has a life of its own. You know, look here behind me. I've got my own silhouette. So yeah, take care of yourself, dude. And look, if you got to go from head to balls, that's totally okay. I've done that so many times. But Manscaped makes it so much easier to go from your head to your balls, and everything's taken care of.
Guys, go to Manscaped now. You can get the Beard Hedger or one of their classic products. You know, they invented the Lawnmower 4.0. They invented ball care, and now they're going to take care of your face. So take care of your face and get 20% off. Today's the day. It's totally worth it. We both love it. We both use it. 20% off and free shipping. And they send you a whole bunch of stuff. They send you like the beard oil, and they send you like the brush and the comb and the whole gimmick. That's 20% off with free shipping with the code FTR. Use the code FTR. Go from Mr. Irrelevant to a first-round pick with Manscaped.com.
We ran out of time last week. You know, you had some things going on. It was your birthday. I had some things going on as well. And we decided we wanted to catch up with the tag team tournament and give the fans, because I get a lot of messages about this tournament and how much people love it. And not even the concept of the tournament, but like the information and how in depth I go with each team and how much research I did on the teams to
Right.
push them forward. So yeah, I just want to make sure we stay on top of it and give the fans what they want.
Well, it's educational too. You know, as you're saying, it's a lot of people are like, I didn't know about this tag team, or even tag teams of the 80s I didn't know about. And now they're learning about it. Someone chimed in today, before we get started, about one of our matchups in our imaginary tag team tournament. And that person was Ricky by God Morton, was looking forward to one of our imaginary matchups in our imaginary tag team brackets. That's fucking weird. It's cool, right?
Yeah, it's real cool. I mean, he's quite possibly the greatest babyface of all time. Maybe definitely one of the greatest babyfaces I've ever seen. To understand when to fight back, how to go back down to selling. And he never cared about looking tough, and the fans never questioned him about being tough, because his toughness was in the selling and never giving up. And I wish that a lot of other wrestlers would understand that and realize that, because he is legit a greatest of all time wrestler.
There's a wrestling writer who used to write on the internet named Scott Keith, and he used to use this term, playing Ricky Morton. You know, like if someone's playing Ricky Morton, and that goes to show that Ricky Morton didn't mind get beat up for 20 minutes and making Robert look good to make the other tag team look good. And that's what tag team wrestling is all about, right? Is that selflessness.
Right. And ultimately it was drawing money, and that's how they drew their money. It was Ricky getting beat up, Robert making the hot tag. And that was before the days of wrestlers working for a journalist to give him a 5-star rating. This was when they needed to work towards making money at the next house.
And we'll get to it. Want to talk real quick about our live show coming up this Thursday as we're recording, March 30th, Los Angeles, California, the live show. Y'all know all about it, but what you might not know is that you need to be there. It's going to be a party, March 30th at the Biltmore Hotel, Los Angeles, the home of WrestleCon. Wardlow, Sean Spears, Hobbs, although Hobbs and Wardlow will not be there at the same time. We do want to emphasize that. And of course, Cash Wheeler, some other special guests, lots of fun times, and most importantly, hanging out afterwards with the VIPs and drinking some tequila. Get your tickets at FTRwithDax.com. So, Dax, you ready to get started with this tag team Sweet 16?
Yeah, this is going to be the hardest one overall, but let's do it.
Hey, how'd your basketball team do in the NCAA?
Dude, you almost got to fuck off right there. The funny thing is they didn't even make it. How do you start off? Yeah. How do you start off the season as preseason number 1 ranked team, come in the first couple of weeks, number 1 ranked team, and don't even make the fucking tournament, dude? Oh my God. I don't remember. But however, this is the first time ever that no number 1 seeds are in that have gone on to the Elite 8. So that's pretty interesting for the NCAA tournament.
Well, it'll be better because UNC is one of the greatest college programs of all time for basketball. So I'm sure this will be a wake-up moment, and they will come back, and we're going to have some wake-up moments right now to it. Ricky Morton chimed in on this one. Rock and Roll Express versus the Young Bucks by the Dax Harwood criteria. Where do you see this match? Who moves on?
So I want to say this right out of the gate. Rock and Roll Express beat the Young Bucks. because that's the clickbait thing, right? That's where they're going to take, and the journalists are going to say that I say that your Rock and Roll Express is greater than Young Bucks. So I'll say that right out of the gate.
I thank you. I thank you for downloads for that though too. So appreciate it. Yeah, that's great.
Dude. So the past versus the present, and real quick, whenever we had the what we were building to FTR versus the Young Bucks, and we had the tag team appreciation night, and we brought in Arn and Tully side by side with myself and Cash, and on the other side we had Ricky and Robert with the Young Bucks. That was the dynamic, the past versus the past and the present, and the two teams that really influenced the modern two teams that we saw in front of us at the screen. And that's one of my most proud moments in wrestling, dude. I love that. Obviously, we modeled Cash and I modeled ourselves after Arn and Tully, and I would imagine that the Young Bucks modeled themselves. I'm sure they modeled themselves after the Hardys, the Hardys, but the Hardys modeled themselves after the Rock and Roll Express. The Rock and Roll Express, man. What else can you say about them? And I'll get there. I want to start with the Young Bucks first. A dynamic team, incredible team, one of the best teams I've ever seen in my entire life. They spawned a whole bunch of imitators after them, but those imitators couldn't do the style that the Young Bucks did. And that's a compliment to the Young Bucks. The only two men that could do that style and pull it off are Nick and Matt. And that says something too. And, and they also, I feel they were they were two of, and if not the two guys who brought independent wrestling back to prominence. They loaded it up on his back and they traveled the whole world like a territory wrestler would have done back in the day. And they made independent wrestling must see, and that's a big compliment to them. They also
they made wrestling cool again in a lot of ways. Yeah.
And they also they also helped start a whole new wrestling promotion, and the first wrestling promotion in 20 plus years that became a competition to Vince McMahon. So another notch in their belt they should be proud of. But on the other side of the ring, you got Rock and Roll Express, probably the greatest babyface tag team of all time. I mean, off the top of my head, can you think of someone else? I can't think of anyone else.
No.
Greatest babyface tag team.
Because if you look at any Rock and Roll Express match and you have the sound on, good God, the whole match, there is screaming the whole match. There's a saying in music too, man, you want to draw the females in. If you draw the females in, you'll draw the males in. The males will go, the females go. That's why there's ladies' nights at bars, right? The Rock and Roll Express, all you hear is this high-pitched scream the whole damn match.
Yeah, and, but the thing that's so beautiful about both of them, I mean, Robert doesn't get the credit he deserves because he is an incredible talent. Always has been an incredible talent, but Ricky, man, he was the one who drew the emotion for those people because he sold, and he understood that, and he understood how important selling was. And, I said it earlier about him understanding and knowing when to fight back and how to fight back. If you watch Ricky, man, and I implore every young wrestler and old wrestler, myself included, please watch as much Ricky Morton as you can. Watch, even if it's just a singles match, Ricky Morton versus Nick Buckwinkle from Southeastern is so incredible. But you watch Ricky, man, people understand this. Like, if these are the two heads of the wrestlers, and if they're face to face, the people understand that they're on an even playing field. But when Ricky would start to slip and he'd start to sell and he'd start to, lower his demeanor, lower his body, people understood he was on the defense, you know? And so when Ricky would fire back, he'd give one of those beautiful right hands, boom, but then he'd keep his stance wide and he would squat down and he'd stay low to let people know he still wasn't done fighting back and he still hadn't come back yet. And then he would come, when the heel would come back to him, he'd give him one more punch, boom, and then he'd go back down to maybe a knee or something, but he kept fighting back instead of standing there, you know, and you know, I see a lot of, I don't want to say I see a lot of people do this, but I do, man. You know, they stand there face to face with the heel opponent and they trade, boom, bam, boom, 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 boom. And I understand that people are going to think that's cool, but they're not going to feel for you as a baby face. And they're not going to feel for that heel either, who is kicking the shit out of the baby face and keeping him down. But yeah, Ricky is a national treasure in the wrestling business, and why he's not a coach somewhere blows my mind. So, in saying all that, the greatest tag team rivalry of all time was Rock and Roll Express versus the Midnight Express. I wanted to, and I hope we still can, eventually do the same kind of business with the Young Bucks and create a new era, Rock and Roll versus Midnights. But yeah, Rock and Roll Express are going to have to move on in this one.
Ricky's still got his wrestling school, right? School of Morton?
Yep, Chucky, Tennessee.
So check that out, guys. If you want to be a wrestler, you want to learn from the best. The next bracket, the Rockers versus the Assassins.
Yep. So I think, you know, a lot of the modern day fans, and even, you know, fans from the 90s and early 2000s, they're going to say the Rockers, but that's only because there's so much more footage of the Rockers. If you do your research and you listen to people who have talked about the Assassins and how they changed the dynamic of tag team wrestling and the heat that they used to get, the Assassins, man, they I guess they entered or introduced a new mold of heel tag team wrestling. And they were also athletic, and they were also snappy with their punches and their kicks. And I think I said it a couple of weeks ago, they have a match where it's two heels. It is Gino Hernandez and Tully Blanchard versus the Assassins. And the Assassins make those people in San Antonio love Tully and Gino.
Which is not an easy thing to do with those two fellas.
Yeah. So, you know, as much as I love the Rockers, as much as I study their work, you know, and respect what they've done for tag team wrestling, because, you know, real quick about the Rockers, you know, a lot of babyface tag teams now, and even heel tag teams too, think that chemistry and like continuity means hitting a whole bunch of tag moves, tagging it out, big, huge move, bam, 1-2 kick out, tag, another big, huge something, a drop to hold into a kick up, into a this and a that, and then a this, boom. That doesn't make you, that worked for one team. This is my opinion. That worked for one team. And that one team that did it that style was Motor City Machine Guns. They did it great. And they did it because they were two undersized guys who were incredibly talented and knew that they had to use their quickness to get over like that. And they never ever stood face to face with the heel and hit him back and forth and boom, boom, boom. They knew when to sell, but they also knew to keep these heels rocking. They had to do this, that, boom, bam, boom, and then they'd slow down, right? That's the beauty of the Motor City Machine Guns. I know we're talking about them, but with the Rockers, man, that's who babyface tag teams should watch to see what continuity actually is. And continuity is taking that wrist, tag, coming in, taking that wrist again, tag again, off the top, boom, taking that wrist again, snap bearing them down, tag, holding it down. The other guy hits the ropes and a big splash on the arm, boom. Is the continuity is just keep tagging. And that's what makes you look like, and the fans perceive you to be a great tag team. All that said about the Rockers, man, I'm going to have to push forward the Assassins.
A lot of debate online, and I even put a poll up, and a lot of people disagreed with the previous matchup of the Rockers going over the British Bulldogs. You stand by it, but also the Rockers go down to the Assassins.
I stand by it only because the Rockers were a team a much longer time than the Bulldogs were.
That is fair. That is fair. LOD versus the Usos. Man, there ain't no losers today, guys. There ain't no losers because someone's got to go home. In my mind, because I'm old, I got to go LOD. But then I remember, look at what these guys have done.
Right.
Not only that, by intents and purposes, these guys are headlining a night of WrestleMania.
Right.
I mean, what they've done the last year has been amazing.
Right. So I think the only at the end of the day, when the Young Bucks are done wrestling and they're finished with their careers, maybe then we'll say, okay, they surpassed rock and roll. Same thing with the Usos, man. They're going to go down as they'll go down as the greatest tag team in WWE history, period. In wrestling history, they'll definitely go down as one of the greatest tag teams of all time as well. And they've been teaming together since 2010, however, the impact that Legion of Doom had, the impact the Road Warriors had on wrestling, not just in America, not just for Crockett, but around the globe, dude. I mean, everywhere, in Japan too. It was, incredible. And we talk about, some of the copycats the Young Bucks had, and so, the Hardy Boys, another example, copycats. There was a ton of copycats after them. The Legion of Doom had way more copycats than anybody. And the thing is that their copycats also came on the competition's television. And the competition, which was WWF at the time, was supposed to be the superior brand. But they were copying with Demolition. They were copying the Legion of Doom's mold. And, you got to think about all that and think about how much money they drew as a team. Yes, I understand they probably didn't have the amount of great matches that the Usos have and will continue to have. But right now, in 2023, I got to say, I'm going to have to push the Legion of Doom through. Ask me in 10 years, dude, and I probably will have a different answer. Now, maybe ask me in 5 years, and I'll probably have a different answer. But right now, today, I'm going to push through Legion of Doom.
Arn and Tully versus the Fabulous Kangaroos, a tag team where you said last week had those gimmicks that you throw and they come back. and Conrad texted you about that, didn't he?
Yeah, the gimmick. What are those gimmicks called, dude? That's what happens when you get bumped around for 20 years. But now my family says it just because I've said it so much, and I lose like my train of thought, and I try to think of so many things at a time. I just say the word gimmick, and I
got to tell you, like Monday, I told a student just for hanging out with you. I said, "Go ahead and pick up that gimmick. Let's get started." It was a violin bow.
Yeah, but you forget what it's called.
You're right.
And you don't want to look stupid by saying, that thing. What is it? You just say gimmick, and it works for everything.
So this tag match.
Mm-hmm. Kangaroos and Arn and Tully. I don't know enough about the Kangaroos. You know what I'm saying? And I've done a ton of research, and I know how important they are to tag team wrestling. And they're the first real tag team. When they came over to America, it was called Australian tag rules or something like that.
They still use that term for many years, like a regular tag team match. Yeah, Australian tag team. Right.
Yep. And they popularized this whole gimmick match that we know now as a tag team match. However, this is my tournament, and I think that the influence, the money drawn, the matches they had, Arn and Tully, don't get too much better than that, man. You could put them at the top of the card in the main event, or they could open the card because Great American Bash 1988, excuse me. Great American Bash 1988, they opened up the card with Sting and Nikita Koloff. 20-minute Broadway, fucking barn burner of a match, right? But if you wanted to, just a few months prior at the Clash of the Champions 2, they wrestled Sting and Dusty Rhodes in the main event in Miami.
Right.
So you could put them at the top, or you put them at the top of the card or the opening match of the card. It didn't matter. And their frenetic pace, I've said it a million times, their frenetic pace trying to blow people up because they made whoever they worked with catch up to them. They never worked down. They only worked up and made the team they were working with work with them. They put the baby faces in the middle, and they made the excitement around them. Arn and Tully, it could flip flop, but man, for my money, could go down as the greatest heel tag team of all time. So incredible. So I'm going to send through Arn and Tully, and I have to eliminate the Kangaroos as much as I don't want to.
And I think, as we've seen, characters are important. And the thing about Arn and Tully is that there was not one disingenuous or non-credible thing about them. When you saw their characters, everything was consistent. You believed everything you saw, probably more than anybody. So in my lifetime, you got to go Arn and Tully. Midnight Express against Edge and Christian. Dax is about to leave now.
I'm very close friends with Adam. I've said it a million times. I'm very close friends with the Jay as well. And that's a dream match, dream tag team match for me and Cash. However, I don't think that they would get upset with me for saying that Dennis and Bobby or Stan and Bobby or whoever are going to go through. The Midnight Express, specifically Dennis and Bobby, the Midnight Express are the reason we have the tag matches, the style of tag matches we have right now. Okay. They're the ones who created this fast-paced, high spot style kind of match. I mean, they did it logically, though. They did it by grabbing holds and then having the babyface come out of the holds and things like that. And they knew when to pick up the pace and slow it down. And more often than not, I think you could ask any of those wrestlers in that time period, nobody could follow the matches that Midnight Express and Fantastics, Midnight Express and Rock and Roll, or Midnight Express and PYT had, because they were so incredible. Yeah, man. Dennis, the quintessential badass heel. He knew when to get, he knew when to use his hand as power, like, put the brakes fucking on for a second. He knew when to be reeling on his heels and fall on his ass. But then when it was time, dude, when it was time for him to get his heat and kick ass, there was nobody better. Okay, because from what I hear and what I understand, he was a real badass in real life. But I've said it before. He used to do this little thing. It was just a backbreaker, right? Just a simple backbreaker. But he would pick the guy up pendulum style, right? Let the people see what's happening. He would execute it so beautifully, so perfectly, right on the knee, boom, keep him there for a second, and then shove him off like that guy was a piece of shit. Like he was a piece of garbage, just push him down. And that's a great heel, to hit a beautiful move like that, and then 1 second later, disregard him this way, you know what I'm saying? And let the people say, yeah, you didn't have to do that, dude. Subconsciously think that, you didn't have to do that. Their style of heat was unlike any other tag team at the time, because they're, and sometimes I see it, nowadays too, a lot of times. And when Cash and I were starting to make our way up in the ranks of tag team, I saw it too, like the heels, and I guess the baby faces too, they would bypass the heat, because in their mind, the heat was just a boring segment, quote unquote, a boring segment of the match. The heat should be the most intriguing part of the match. The heat should be the most important part of the match, because that's the part of the match you want to get the people invested in your baby faces. So when we go to the false finishes, they care. They care to see a winner, And so watching Bobby and Dennis put together these elaborate hope spots to keep the baby face alive just enough to cut him back down, so the people think, okay, he's not finished yet. He's fighting for us. That's what the babyface is for, and that's what a great heel does. So all that said, Edge and Christian, incredible. If we broke it down and took Bobby, Dennis, and Stan and made them singles wrestlers, Edge and Christian would blow them out the water, right? But as a tag team, Edge and Christian, as a tag team, they defined an era. They really did, especially with the incredible matches they had. But they weren't a team for very long, and I just got to say, Midnights are going to go through.
Midnights go through, and they're going to be facing the winners of the Dudley Boys and Patterson and Stevens. Many people consider Patterson and Stevens the greatest tag team of all time.
Right. Yep. I wish there was a ton more of footage. I've looked high and low for it, but I can't find it, because I want to see for myself what they did to stand out, that so many years later, still the same men and same women are saying that tag team was the best tag team I've ever seen. Today, the same wrestlers from back then are saying, I've seen them all. that was the best tag team.
And they drew like a mother too.
Right. That's what I
San
understand.
Francisco, yeah.
Patterson and Stevens, especially, from what I understand, Stevens, man, in his prime, had a style unlike any other that a lot of people adopted right after. Patterson was an incredible seller, incredible visual seller, also had great fire too. But the Dudleys, obviously a team I've seen a lot more of, I've studied a lot more of, also can lay claim to having more championships than myself and Cash. I mean, they're the only tag team to hold ECW, WWF, fake WCW, but still.
You always got to say that. It's correct. Yeah,
WCW, IWGP tag team championships. They even went to All Japan and won the tag team tournament there in All Japan. They are an incredibly decorated tag team, TNA tag team champions as well. And everywhere they've gone, they've drawn money, and people love them. And they were at the Icons of Wrestling. They were side by side with us at the signing, and people still showed up in droves to see them. So in my opinion, at least in 2023, until I can finally see a little more footage, I'm going to have to go with Bubba and Devon. They're a team, like I said, during a dark time of tag team wrestling, they kept it alive for a very long time. And everywhere they went, they were on top of the tag team division. Like I said, ECW, WWE, TNA, New Japan, everywhere they went, they were on top and presented to be top guys as well. So I'm going to have to say the Dudley Boys here.
And I mean, it's a good thing that Patterson doesn't have a Twitter account like Bully Ray. So we don't have to hear about it if we don't put them through. Dudleys go through. Now we have one where Hardy Boys New Day. Okay. Yeah. That's, I guess for me, because the Hardys were always the same two guys and the New Day, as awesome as they are, all three of them individually amazing.
Yeah.
You might be thinking Hardys just because of the tag team act, maybe.
Yeah. I'm going to have to go with Hardys too. I love New Day. I love the guys, in the team. They also, we've talked about dark days of tag team wrestling. I don't know if it was any darker in the WWE than when the New Day was on top, and they're the ones who single-handedly, them and the Usos, they single-handedly kept tag team wrestling afloat.
And no one gave a shit, and they made people give a shit.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And whatever they were given, they turned it to gold, and that is a characteristic of a talent that any boss would want.
As human beings, I don't think you get better in this bracket. If this was a human being bracket, the New Day comes out on top all the time, right? Three
better humans than the characters, and the characters are incredible. But like I said before, Hardys, so many imitators came after them, and I don't mean imitators like young bucks who studied them and used their style. I'm saying people wrestlers who would dress like them,
just aped them.
Try to do the swanton, bam, which in that, as well, they brought two new moves to life. The swanton from Jeff and the twist of fate from Matt, those moves I'd never seen, at least on national television before.
And your boy Wardlow does a Jeff Hardy swanton, period.
Right. Yeah.
Perfect.
And the reason is because he loves Jeff Hardy. So I think for what they've done for tag team wrestling for years and years and years, you think about it, even before WWE, they were in WWE and predominantly in WWE in 1998, towards the end of 98, on and off until just recently, 3 years ago, and even they came to AEW for a bit, and I'm hoping to see Jeff back one day and, ready to go with Matt. But yeah, the longevity of those guys, that's why I'm gonna have to push it through.
And you have to give them credit also. Hardy's through past the New Day, but you have to give them credit too for the ability to both forge credible singles careers too.
Yep.
They absolutely both did. So, okay, buddy, let's see where this one goes. Mm-hmm. Hart Foundation versus the Steiners. A lot of the arguments you make for tag teams, it's hard to fight against the Steiners in this situation.
Yeah, but also the Hart Foundation as well, dude. They teamed together from 1985 all the way to 1991.
That's a long time in tag team life.
Yeah, a very long time. And they teamed together in a time where wrestling was tag team rich. Just in the WWF, you had the Rockers, the Brainbusters for a period of time, the Rougeau brothers, obviously the Hart Foundation, the Bulldogs, the Killer Bees, Volkov and Iron Sheik, the Dream Team, all these Hall of Fame names. That's what Brett and Jim were up against, right? They also had an incredible act down pat. Brett, an underrated seller and one of the greatest sellers of all time. Jim, just what he is, a rhino, he was this big barrel-chested badass who would come in and he would just clean house. And it's
interesting with the Hart Foundation. Watching them as a kid, I didn't know they're both from Calgary and Neidhart's married to Brett's sister and all that. I didn't know all that. I saw Mr. Fuji's guy tagging with this guy who was new and young, Bret Hart, and all of a sudden this shit just worked. It just clicked. Like, I don't know what it was with Jimmy Hart. I remember Jimmy Hart on TNT going, I have this new tag team with Bret the Hitman Hart. I was like, Hitman, that's new, and it clicked though. Like it's something about those two guys made magic together.
As baby faces and heels. They did it as baby faces and became a tag team champion as baby faces. They also did it as heels and were tag team champions as heels. But
Steiners, bro.
Yeah, it's the Steiners as a team did team longer than the Hart Foundation, just by a little bit, not too much. And they traveled the world too. They've worked in WWF, they worked in NWA and WCW and New Japan, and everywhere they went, every place they went, they became the tag team, the top tag team. Held many, many, many championships around the world. Classic matches, incredible matches, an incredible act as well. An act that was just two brothers that were amateur wrestlers. The people connected with them because they were brothers and they understood that family dynamic. But ultimately, they were just wrestlers and the people loved them. And
there was also the X factor of this young Scott Steiner who appeared to be the best wrestler in the entire planet.
Yeah.
With Rick Steiner, who is this guy who previously was with Kevin Sullivan, who is dangerous. There's a lot of different nuances going on in this tag team.
Yeah. So I guess surprise for me, I'm going to send the Steiners through.
Wow.
They beat the Hart Foundation only because their career lasted longer as a tag team. They did a lot more stuff. They traveled the globe and made money everywhere in every promotion. So, and then, also not to say Brett and Jim didn't, but if they didn't like something or they thought they were getting shit on, they stood up for themselves, and they stood up for it. And they was, okay, well, if you don't like it, then we can just leave. You know what I mean? And that was back in a time where if you stood up for yourself, people applauded you for it. Now you're a piece of shit.
And
but
they didn't they didn't need to play the political game because they would just beat the shit out of you.
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead and tell Scott Steiner to fuck off. See what happens.
Right.
Try it today. See what happens.
Yeah, I saw him at Icons of Wrestling, still looking like a badass.
Intimidating as shit. So we are now in our final 8. It's a little Crockett heavy. It's definitely 80s heavy. It's a little some recency bias in there, but it's our and your tag team brackets. So if you disagree, go ahead and tweet Conrad at hey, it's Conrad. So let's go ahead and do this now. We have the Rock and Roll Express versus the Assassins, the first match in our top 8, Elite 8.
Again, I've spoken, just about how much they mean to tag team wrestling, both teams, that is. I would love to hear what Ricky would think. I would love to get his take on the Assassins because I'm sure he watched them, as a younger kid, as a younger wrestler. He might have worked with him as well in Southeastern. I don't know. Him and Ken Lucas. Ricky always, and I've seen their matches, dude. Like I've seen Gino Hernandez versus Ken Lucas and Ricky Morton. What incredible matches they had. Ken Lucas was an incredible babyface. Ricky says he's the greatest babyface he's ever seen, and that's where he learned all of his babyface mannerisms was from Ken Lucas. So they might have worked with the Assassins down in Southeastern. So I'd love to ask Ricky. Maybe I'll text him after this and see what he thinks of the Assassins.
But do the rock and rolls go through?
Rock and rolls go through. Yep, for sure.
All right. We've seen this match.
Oh, shit.
We've seen this match. I've seen this match. It's the LOD versus Arn and Tully.
Mm-hmm.
LOD versus the Horsemen. Here we go again. Paul Ellering, J.J. Dillon. Who wins this match?
I mean, I love Arn and Tully. Love Arn and Tully.
Oh, boy.
That's my style of work. If you ask me, do you want to watch 100 matches of Arn and Tully or 100 matches of LOD? I'm going to say Arn and Tully. But going through, trying to be unbiased here, it's got to be the Road Warriors, right? I mean, again, they teamed way longer than Arn and Tully did. Drew way more money over a longer period of time than Arn and Tully. Also, again, traveled the world in New Japan, All Japan, NWA, WWF, AWA, and won titles everywhere. The very first tag team in the history of wrestling to be the AWA World Tag Team Champions, WWF World Tag Team Champions, and NWA World Tag Team Champions. So speaking to that, it's got to be the Road Warriors.
And we're talking at a time where those were the three places to wrestle. Like AWA, yep. NWA, WWF were the three places to wrestle. You talk about their influence. LOD had all those copycats you mentioned before. But the idea of these big muscled up dudes storming the ring and beating people up, Brock Lesnar. I mean, just, for all those guys from Minnesota were also influenced by the Road Warriors. But, man, it sucks that Arn and Tully are out. But, man, I don't see how you can live with yourself as an honest person to say it's got to be right. LOD for the criteria you have.
For sure, dude. They're the reason tag team wrestling is still a draw now. They're one of the reasons. There's a few different ones, but they're one of the reasons. And also, when you think about it, any tag team with two big muscled up monsters, they always either get compared, for better or worse, they get compared to Road Warriors. Or whenever a booker is thinking, okay, I need two big Road Warrior tag. You know what I mean? Like two big Road Warriors for a tag. That's what they always go back to. Or two big guys that say, go watch the Road Warriors, how they demolished people, So yes, Road Warriors.
I mean, look at the impact Sting and Ultimate Warrior have had on the business.
Right.
And would they be in the business if not for the Road Warriors? Probably not.
Right.
So we have the Midnight Express versus the Dudley Boys. Mm-hmm. This is a great matchup. From what you said earlier, man, I think as much respect as you put on the names of the Dudleys, it's got to be the Midnights, right?
Absolutely. The quintessential heel tag team. They're the heel tag team that all heel tag teams should aspire to be. Dennis is the heel wrestler all heel wrestlers should aspire to be. I mean, I've said it before, Fit Finley, and I talked to Don Callis about this last week. Fit Finley, Tully Blanchard, and Dennis Condrey. In my opinion, the three best in-ring working heels of all time, because they could do anything and they could hit beautiful moves, and their punches were snug and their kicks were fucking flawless, dude. They were executed flawlessly. Their holds, there was no holes in their holds. They knew when to pick up the pace. They knew when to slow it down. People believed in them. Believed in them so much as badasses when they were chicken shit heels, or when they were chicken shits and they put the brakes on. They believed in them then too, because they knew they could come back and kick ass if they needed to. Right. I can't say enough good things about Dennis Condrey, and it almost pisses me off to think about how many young guys haven't gone back and watched Dennis, because Mac, you could learn so much from him. I love the Dudleys. I think if this match in the two primes would have ever happened, it would have been incredible, because Bobby and Dennis obviously would have bumped around for the Dudley Boys, but the Dudley Boys would have returned the favor to them because they have so much respect, I'm sure, for Bobby and Dennis. It would have been a great heel versus a great babyface tag team. But we got to send Midnights through, even if it's just for the feud, the almost decade-long feud with the Rock and Roll Express.
For sure. And for those of you who grew up when I did, you got to know the Midnights by watching them beat the utter shit out of these guys on Saturday night every week. You never really saw, like,
Yes.
they would just, and so that's how a lot of us see the greatness of the Midnights. The Midnights would storm the ring. Cornette would take the microphone away from Tony and David Crockett, and it was an amazing thing. And so if you want to see a Midnights match, go on Peacock if you dare, and just go to an old Saturday night. Go to the old ones. Go to the old ones and watch them beat the shit out of George South and Rocky King or whoever, or Joel Deaton or whoever happened to have the misfortune of getting beat up by Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton that week, and see the greatness of the manager of Jim Cornette.
But you know what? The greatest thing about those two, the greatest thing about Bobby and Dennis was if they were working with somebody the caliber of George South, who is an incredible wrestler, still today an incredible wrestler. If they were working with somebody the caliber of George South, they would give him a little bit just to entertain the fans, but also show the fans, hey, this guy might have a little something. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They
could make the Italian Stallions and Pez Whatleys of the world look like fucking world beaters sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, make themselves look like world beaters too.
Right.
I watch a lot of the dark matches in the back, and I see a lot of these wrestlers who are under contract with AEW, and these are get over matches for that wrestler, right? They're specifically for that wrestler to get his character or her character over, or get their moves over,
right,
and get who they are over, right? And then I watch it, and they have 5 minutes or 6 minutes, and in that 5 or 6 minutes or whatever the time is, they just try to have what they perceive to be a 5-star match in 5 minutes. And that does nothing for them as a character. That doesn't make the fans feel any certain way about them. It's two wrestlers who are 50-50, one who's under contract and been here for 3 or 4 years, and one we're just seeing this week. At this moment, you tell the person, hey, I'm sorry, this match is for me. I'm hoping one day you'll get a contract and I can return the favor to you, and your get over match will be with me. You know what I'm saying? But today, on this particular night, it's about me, and I got to make sure that I can get over.
It's a lost art. It's a lost intention.
Right.
And as a young fan, all I saw were squash matches, like for the first 10 years of watching wrestling. And I love these wrestlers because I saw them as kick-ass guys. How much would we think of Nikita Koloff if Nikita Koloff wasn't fucking people up? Like, Matthew and I once went through all the Saturday night matches just to watch Nikita beat people up. You know what I'm saying? Like,
if Nikita tried to have this 5-star match in 1986 or 85, he would have stumbled his way through. You know what I'm saying? It would have looked shitty because he was learning on the job. But we had to make a killer. We had to make a killer so we could make money. I'm not saying we because my ass wasn't there. I was barely born.
But let's say it anyway.
Right, yeah. But we had to make this killer so we had somebody our babyface could work with and make money around the territory. That's a lost art in wrestling too. Let's go on to the next one, dude. Midnight Express go through against the Dudleys. I hate to see the Dudleys go, but love to watch them walk away.
Hardys versus the Steiners. I got nothing.
Yeah,
I got nothing, Dax Harwood. This one's all you. I got nothing.
Yeah, so I've earlier explained all the credentials of the Steiners and of the Hardy Boys, what they meant to tag team wrestling, what their career means to the profession of wrestling. You can't lose whoever you pick, right? But I'm going to tell you why I'm going to pick the Hardys. Okay, is again the longevity. And after their WWE careers, right, they went on to TNA and were successful there. They went on to work all around the country, and they were successful everywhere they went. They've drawn money every time they've gotten back together. They still are drawing money right now. They're still copycats of Matt and Jeff right now. And there's still people who work the style that Matt and Jeff kind of introduced to our profession, because they were a perfect mix of the Rockers and the Rock and Roll Express, because they had the athleticism of the Rockers and they had the adoration from the fans that the Rock and Roll Express had. I don't mean this as a slight at all, because I've told you how much I love Robert Gibson. I'm sorry, but Matt as the Robert Gibson, Jeff as the Ricky Morton.
Sure.
But they both also had incredible singles careers too. So that's why I'm going to send the Hardys through, and a legit dream match coming up next will be the Hardys and Midnights. And I don't know if I can talk about that one.
Well, we're down to our final four. Guys, we have, as you said, the Hardys and the Midnights, and we've got the Rock and Roll versus the LOD. Congratulations to the Hardys on getting a time machine and going back to 1986 Crockett for this four team final four. We will do that next week, or we will do that soon. Well, here we are live again, Dax, and I will tell you, it's been a long trip. These 64 teams, down to the 16, down to the 4. You know what's funny is like people online getting mad about an imaginary tournament.
Well, dude, that's the only thing they get mad about today. That's where we're lucky if that's all they're getting mad about. Usually I get tagged in everything. Yesterday I went through a little emotional Twitter escapade. I saw all the people that it's crazy. And I had to talk to Maria about it, and I told her, I said, Matt tells me all the time that that's not real life. The real life is the meet and greets or the live reactions. But right. There's so many people, dude, and I would imagine that a lot of them are the same person, but it seems like it's their mission in life to try to make my day worse. But that's their God-given right, and they're able to say what they want to say. And if it makes them feel better to take a shit on me, then hey, go for it, dude. But my plan now, at least for today, my plan is to not check my mentions anymore. Right. Maria said, you can only limit yourself to 30 minutes on Twitter from now on and get all your tweets in and do that and stuff. And that's not going to be able to happen because there's going to be sometimes we have to do it for our job and things like that. But I think from now on, dude, I'm just going to leave my mentions alone, not even look at them, not even listen to them, because last night I got to the point where I was talking to Maria and I was like, my God, I said, I get this huge ass needle stuck in my knee every couple of months. And I went through how bad, my physical well-being is on a daily basis. And it's like, and I asked her, I said, and what's it all for? Why do I even do it? It's, I do it for the fans who I perceive to love me. But then you fucking look on Twitter and social media and they don't, they all hate me. So it's all, I told her, I was like, it's all for nothing. And she had to bring me back down to earth a little bit.
And that is a perception issue because they all hate me. It's funny because you say stuff like that. The wisest person I know, his name, his name's Victor. And he says, everything is great. Everything goes along the way it should, but the bad stuff sticks out to us. That's how you know it's the exception.
Yeah.
That's how you know it's the exception. Like, think about a busy highway. There's millions of cars going down all the time. We see a car crash and we're like, oh shit, that's a dangerous place.
Yeah.
But that just pops out at us. Just like on Twitter, you will scroll past 50 people telling you how much they love FTR, and you'll see this motherfucker with no name, no face, saying, fuck you, Dax. And you're like, let me get at him. That's just the human condition. But I hope it doesn't affect the way that you go about your day.
Sometimes it does. I mean, more often than not, I'm able to overlook it. But yesterday, I think I was just really in my own head and in my own feelings because of, the thing you sent me about Brian Alvarez, because there was so much more that I wanted to say. And that for whatever reason, usually I can skip past it. I think that, better than most people. I can just get through the Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez bullshit and all the other, the dirt sheet writers and stuff like that. But yesterday, when he was so wrong about what he said, but what he was saying, he was so sure of it that he was right, and the people that listen to him will think he's right, and it just, I don't know, it just put me in a bad place yesterday. It only lasted for a couple of minutes. Maria brought me back down to earth, and I was good.
That's great. You have that,
Yeah, for sure.
And I will say that, no disrespect, but that's a show that appears behind a paywall. Our audience is multiples of that audience. Multiples. Yeah. So I'm talking about the audience here. Not to mention the audience that when you go out and you get cheered and the ratings go up a little bit, that's the real audience. So good luck with that. I'm giving the advice, but I've motherfucked a person or two that I didn't know on Twitter in my day. So let's get to the fun stuff, dude. We have so much fun doing this.
Yes.
Me and you would do this without a podcast. That's the best part.
Yeah,
We would debate this shit and talk about this shit like, ooh, Steiners versus Hardys. How are we going to do that? You know? So we are down to the final four. The final four, we have the Rock and Roll Express. We have LOD. We have the Midnight Express. And we have the Hardys. Before we get to the final four, is there anybody that you feel like may have missed out on the final four because they drew a tough bracket?
Yeah, I was thinking about that today. Actually, there's a ton of people that missed out because of who they worked with in the bracket. You know, on any given day, the Art and Tully could have been in the final four, or the Hart Foundation could have been in the final four. You know, it's just, you know, next year we could use the exact same teams and the exact same seedings, switch everything up, and there could be a completely different winner. But it's just, you know, who they were in there with. And every team that I did research on and thought about and like studied up on, they have a fight in what, you know, being one of the greatest tag teams of all time.
Sure.
And that's, you know, putting these tag teams in the tournament is the biggest compliment I can give all these guys, because that's how much I think about and how much I admire them.
What we haven't talked about on air is a decision to leave FTR off the list. I felt, and I think you felt too, that FTR definitely belongs on there. Like, they got 7 titles and they had like 17 last year and had 3 of the greatest tag team matches of all time and 1 tag team of the year in multiple places. But man, we don't want to, first of all, feed into this thing where, hey, the podcast is here to make Dax look good, or 2, we wanted to not muddy the waters. You know, we didn't want the judge to also be a participant. Do you feel it's the right move to leave FTR off?
Yeah, at first I didn't. You know, I told you, I said I really feel that if we're doing a greatest tag team of all time tournament, and humbly speaking, if we leave myself and Cash off, then I think we're doing a disservice to the fans. But the more, you know, you explained it to me, and the more I thought about it, it would look like a self-serving type of endeavor, and that's the last thing I would want. I don't need any more heat on me that I think too much about myself, or that I'm an ego maniac or whatever. Plus, I wouldn't put myself under, because I would just complain to the office to make sure that I go over to who I'm working with. So, but yeah, you know, I do feel, humbly and egotistically speaking, I do feel Cash and I deserve to be in this tournament. But you know, maybe someone else can take this tournament and swap us out for somebody, and maybe one day we'll you know, in a couple of years, whenever Cash and I are done, we can do it and throw ourselves in there.
Absolutely. And this is just all for fun, guys. By the way, this has as much to do with reality as a 5-star review from your favorite or not favorite journalist. Like, this is just us having fun, but let's take it serious now. The final four, the first match, Rock and Roll Express versus LOD. I don't think they faced each other.
No,
maybe in a Crockett Cup or something. I don't know. I don't think they did, though.
They never faced each other. At least on a national scale, they never faced each other. You know, at the same time, they were baby faces at the same time, and you know, I don't know who would have been at their peak more popular, Road Warriors or Rock and Roll Express. This one by far is the hardest one of the tournament, in my opinion, because obviously I'm a huge fan of Rock and Roll Express, and I've studied their matches, and I love their work, and their style of wrestling is the kind of wrestling that I love. But how can you just discredit and discount the accolades of the Road Warriors and
tough,
what they've
man.
done? You know,
it's tough.
Like I said on the YouTube exclusive, they were the only team the only team to ever win the AWA, the WWF, and the NWA World Tag Team Championships. Nobody ever did that aside from them. They were the second team to ever win the NWA and the WWF Tag Team Championships right after Arn and Tully. But then you got the Rock and Roll Express, who drew money in Mid-South with Bill Watts, and they drew money obviously with Crockett for years and years and years. And they are widely regarded as the greatest babyface tag team of all time.
For sure.
Drawn a ton of money, and Ricky is maybe one of the, obviously not even maybe, one of the greatest in-ring workers of all time. Their act was incredible. However, I think I'm going to have to give the nod to the Legion of Doom.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know.
And Legion of Doom also had that big run in the WWE. A lot of people didn't think much of it. I was disappointed in it, but they did have that run. They also traveled the world. They also had a lot of longevity, and man, there's no losers here. The Rock and Roll Express cannot. In another bracket, they would have made the finals.
Right. Well, you got to, this is my thinking from it. The Rock and Roll Express, like I said, they were in Mid-South, drew a ton of money in Mid-South, became the Mid-South tag team champions. They went to Crockett, drew even more money, a multiple of that amount of money from Mid-South, and became NWA World Tag Team champions on on the national scale on 4 different occasions, I believe. But they had an opportunity, and it was a little later in the career, but they had an opportunity to go to the WWF. Didn't really work out. And they never really had it. They went to Japan, but they didn't really, take off in Japan.
Right.
The Road Warriors, like I said, drew money in AWA when they were working with the Freebirds, and they won their tag team championships. The Road Warriors drew money in the NWA in Crockett and won their tag team championships. Then they went to WWF and had a decent run there, early in 92, won the tag team championships there. All Japan won the tag team championships in All Japan, drew a ton of money in All Japan, became huge superstars in All Japan. And later in their career, all the way to 1997. Yeah, came back to WWE.
Went to Nitro,
in 96 they went to Nitro and WCW, big stars there. 97 they went to WWF, and they continued a pattern there for about the next year or so. And then they also went to New Japan later in their career as well. And they were, everywhere they went, they were featured, and they were featured to be top guys. And that's from AWA and in 84, 5, 6, same thing with NWA there, all the way to 1997 in the WWF. They were still featured, main eventing shows.
They were in that Calgary Stampede.
Stampede. They won the tag team championships again in WWF in 1997. So that's why I have to give the nod to the Road Warriors.
Okay, trivia question. The Rock and Roll Express did in fact face LOD. Okay?
That was in WWF on Shotgun Saturday Night.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Okay, Dax does not have a computer in front of him. He does not have an iPad in front of him.
I have my notes.
Oh, it's in your notes?
No. I'm saying I just have my tournament notes.
You just remembered it just now.
Yeah, it's like a 5 or 6 minute match.
Yeah, you nailed it. It was 5 minutes on the dot, and it was Shotgun Saturday Night. Man, those poor Rock and Roll Express just came along at the wrong time.
Yep, absolutely, the wrong time.
Just a few years early.
And then when they came to WWF in 92, I think Vince just saw them as Southern wrestlers, and also they weren't his type of wrestlers because they weren't bodybuilders. It's heartbreaking that they didn't get the breaks they deserved later on in their careers.
I told a story on Twitter about Ricky Morton because someone said Ricky Morton's a good time. And 3 years ago, Matthew and I were in an elevator in New York From the 20th floor down, it was a full elevator after a show. So everybody was on the show. And we were on the elevator with Ricky Morton, I want to say for like 30 minutes.
Jesus.
And by the end of it, this woman on there looked at Ricky Morton's like, so what band do you play with? Because he was such a rock star in the elevator that everybody's talking to him. He was having such a good time. I'll always remember that the elevator stopped and it opened. Kota Ibushi was waiting there, and he had this look of happiness and saw it was full, and he got sad. And Matthew and I still laugh at that to this very day. But Ricky is great, and he will talk to you. So if you go say hi to him, he's a fucking legend. Go say hi to him.
Yes.
And if he's got any merch or anything, go buy it, because that group got screwed just by the timeliness and also some shady people in their lives. So speaking of another great tag team from that era, man, the Hardys, I think, are the Cinderella story. The Hardys against the Midnights.
Well, you said Cinderella story, and I was thinking about this too. A lot of people, a lot of fans have era bias. Okay. And,
we do too, in a way.
Yeah, kind of. But I also like to think that I am smart enough to know when someone, because here's the thing. For example, Young Bucks, Usos, FTR as well. Even the Hardys. Like, I don't think people want to give teams that young, and I'm not young, but that young, their flowers, because that's not what they grew up with, and they want to have this. This vintage mindset or nostalgic mindset of it was so much better then. And look, I'm not saying FTR and the Young Bucks and the Usos are better than the Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express, and Heart Foundation. I would never, ever say that. But what I am saying is, just because it's 2023 and those three teams that I just named are in the prime of their careers, doesn't mean we can't and shouldn't be named in the same breath as the other three teams. You know what I mean? So I don't think, and we'll talk about it right now. You said Midnight Express versus the Hardy Boys. I don't think that the Hardy Boys should be a Cinderella team, and the reason is because they've been a tag team since 1998. They've
longer than any tag team, almost any tag team in our 64.
Yeah. Aside from Ricky and Robert, but here's the thing: is these guys have been a tag team on national TV for all these years, all these decades. Right? Started in 1998 when they. They were teaming before that, but they started in 1998 with the WWF, and that's when they came into prominence there. And they were a team all, for quite a few years until they kind of went their separate ways. They came back together, went their separate ways again, came back together. And that was they kept, it was like a band that would have reunion tours, but the reunion tours were not just them hitting their greatest hits or doing their greatest hits. They were still having great matches and doing great and providing great content. But in the WWF, tag team champions, the fake WCW tag team champions, went to TNA, became tag team champions there. And Matt got to show his own personality. And they came back to WWE, won tag team championships again.
Yep.
And hot headline shows. I remember they had a really great rivalry with the Bar, and that main evented a lot of the Raw shows and stuff. Then they left WWE, came to AEW, and they were on their way to headlining AEW. Unfortunately, some of the stuff happened with Jeff, but from 98 until 2022, man, on and off, they were a tag team, and I am sending them to the finals over the Midnight Express.
Oh my goodness.
The Midnights
is a huge upset.
Yeah, the Midnights are
upset.
Bobby and Dennis specifically are my favorite tag team of all time. And I think they are the greatest in-ring tag team of all time. I don't think that there is another team that comes close, because there are teams that come close. But they are the greatest heel tag team of all time. I think that they have
greatest tag team act of all time.
Greatest tag team act of all time. Greatest in-ring working tag team of all time. I think that Their tag team psychology was better than any other tag team wrestling, any other tag team psychology. If I were going to make a Mount Rushmore, well, they're in my final four, but if I were going to make a Mount Rushmore of tag teams, they would be the very first ones that I chose. I don't think there is. I don't know if there ever will be, unless you ask Dennis Condrey. I talked to Dennis Condrey quite a bit. If you ask Dennis Condrey, he'll tell you right now, without skipping a beat, he'll tell you that the best tag team he's ever seen is FTR. He'll tell you that in a heartbeat. And I appreciate that, but I don't think so. I think that Dennis and Bobby are because here's the thing, man, is they were so great in the ring. Athletically, they were so good. Believability, they were so good. But as heels, they got the heat, and they knew how to continue to keep people coming back for more.
Real quick, talking about the Midnights, I think one of their feuds that gets overlooked, no one ever talks about it. And for me as a kid, it was hotter than hot. It's fucking James Gang.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Dusty Rhodes, Magnum TA, under masks. And imagine the kind of act you would have to have up against those two fellas.
Yeah.
And to me, that was probably the hottest feud I ever saw as a kid.
Yeah.
Because, man, the Midnights were so hateable, and Dusty and Magnum in those masks, people don't know. It was a short time, but they came out on Saturday night and beat the Midnights. And Cornette's like, what the hell's going on? And they had a few different angles, but I don't know how much of that. You've probably seen all of it, but it's great stuff.
Yeah, also, Ronnie Garvin and Barry Windham, they had a great feud with those guys. And, a year and a half later, they brought the same feud back with Stan and Bobby. But it was over the U.S. tag team titles. They had a ton of good feuds. And then in the Mid-South, like I've said before, they drew money with Rock and Roll Express, of course, drew a ton of money, a shit ton of money, and had incredible matches with Mr. Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA. Those matches are hotter than hell, dude. I don't know if you've seen them, but there's quite a few of those matches. They were incredible there. The Fantastics as well. PYT, which was Coco Beware, and oh my god, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank.
Sweet Brown Sugar?
No,
that was Coco, right?
That was Coco. Yeah, that was Coco and Bobby.
Cordell. What's it? Corvell?
No. Oh god. Anyway, they're pretty PYT, pretty young things, and they had some great shit. Oh God! Now that I'm talking about them,
Norvell Austin.
There we go. Yeah. No. Maybe. Yes. Norvell. Yes. But as great as they were, if you think about it, from the end of '83 until the mid to late '86. No. It was '87, early '87. So from late 83, early 84 to 87 was the run of Dennis and Bobby. And then from 87 until 1990 was Stan and Bobby. So a total of 6 years as a team for these two incarnations, the Midnight Express, up against the Hardy Boys, who teamed regularly on national television from 1998 all the way until 2022, and drew a ton of money, sold a ton of merch, a ton of copycats after them. So that's why I'm sending, as much as it breaks my heart, that's why I'm sending the Hardy Boys through to the finals.
One more thing about the Midnights. People who know Jim Cornette now may not know the way he was as a manager. And the greatest feud for the Midnights didn't actually happen. But you can watch Jim Cornette leading up to it for, 6 or 7 weeks against the Brainbusters, against Arn and Tully.
Oh, yeah.
And they did this thing where slowly but surely they started not getting along. We used to be friends, blah, blah, blah. And it was going to blow up. And unfortunately, that never happened. But it is some amazing television if you watch those weeks of TV.
Yeah, and from what I understand, the gates where they were advertised to have the matches with Arn and Tully versus the Midnights were sold out. For weeks and weeks and weeks they were sold out. And Arn and Tully left. They had one match. Arn and Tully left. Maybe they had a couple of matches, but they had the match where Arn and Tully dropped the belts on a house show to Midnight Express, and then right after that, the Fantastics just stepped in and and Arn told me that Bobby Fulton called him and said, I just want to thank you because this is the most money that I've ever made. And for, a period of a month and a half or 2 months, he made that money because of the angle that was built up with the Horsemen and the Midnights.
Right.
If Arn and Tully could have stayed, man, who knows what would have happened.
Cornette could have turned them babyface, like for real.
Yeah.
Like it was happening.
Yeah, for sure. But things and we also could be talking about the Midnight Express in a different light, because if they would have stuck around and had the feud, if Arn and Tully would have stuck around and had the feud with them, they could have maybe gone on to become what everyone considers the greatest tag team of all time. But yeah, I could talk, and we'll have an episode about Midnights one day
for sure,
but,
and we'll definitely talk about the Southern Boys as well, because that's what the fuck.
Yeah.
So we have our finalists. Man, I'm surprised, and we are not going to reveal the finalists until this show comes out. So we'll tease it on Twitter. We'll say there's some surprises, but man, oh man, LOD versus the Hardys. Hey, did you ever get a chance to meet Hawk or hang out with? Probably not Hawk. Did you ever get a chance to talk to Animal at all?
I did not get a chance to meet or talk with Animal. I remember did his wife pass away? I can't remember.
Well,
I know
he passed away not too long ago.
Yeah, I know he did. But his wife, I can't remember. Forgive me if she hasn't, but she added me on Facebook. I think while he was still alive, and so did Animal. Oh my God, that's right.
Right. Yeah, he's
Animal
a Facebooker.
did too. Yeah, he did too.
Super nice guy, super great guy, and always, like that poor guy always had to wear that makeup all the time. It just, he was the best though. He was the best, and they're sorely missed. But now we are giving them justice. They're in the finals, man. They're in the finals. You've talked all about the LOD and the Road Warriors. Let's talk a little bit about their act. Paul Ellering, crucial. And one of the reasons that they didn't work in WWE, I'd argue, is because they didn't really have that same character with Paul Ellering.
Yeah, I think so. I think he completed the package. Also, WWE was such a different animal than the NWA. And what I mean by that, a lot of different ways, but specifically what I'm saying is WWE was more about, the kids and making people happy and, very colorful and fun loving. That was the WWF. And in NWA, it was blood and guts and, kind of an adult themed wrestling organization. And so Hawk and Animal, they got their reputation and they got over because they were just complete ass kickers. And then they come to WWF and Vince wants to make them a little more colorful. And in WWF, the style is just like Hogan would do. He would just sell for his whole match, make a comeback, hit the leg drop 1, 2, 3. And so that was kind of the style for the WWF back then in 91, 92. That
was not their style.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was just a different presentation in the Road Warriors and a different presentation the Road Warriors had to fit in with the WWF. And on top of that, like you said, Paul Ellering didn't initially come to the WWF. And then when he did, they kind of saddled all of them with Rocco.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That is 100% of Vince, like 100%. Put him with a puppet.
And, I think... Yeah, I could be completely wrong, but what I think is, because I've been there before when a promoter or someone has given me some creative direction and I didn't like it, and you can't completely immerse yourself into it. I feel that maybe Hawk and Animal did not like the creative direction that was given to them, so they're not gonna they don't give all of them to that direction because they can't feel it, especially during the Rocco era, but.
And you've got a I'm sorry, I keep interrupting.
No, that's okay. Please.
You've got a slew of. So Conrad, someone we talk about too much. He says he saw Demolition before LOD, right?
Yeah.
I'd say a lot of fans saw Demolition before LOD. So by the time LOD joins WWF, they're competing with their copycats. They're competing with the Powers of Pain, and they're competing with Demolition. And that kind of muddied the waters and made them a little less special, I think.
Could have, for sure. I think they could, if they would have embraced, the creative direction, because Vince was still putting them over huge. Vince was making them these world beaters. They just had to, I think that they liked being in control of the Road Warriors gimmick. And then right off the bat, Vince brings them in, changes the name Road Warriors to Legion of Doom. And they're probably in the back of their minds thinking, well, he's going to try to, he's going to try to take over, and he's going to fuck up everything we've worked for. So, who knows,
But the fans love them.
Mm-hmm.
The Road Warrior pop, so to speak, was something you heard in WWF. That was something you heard there in the midst of all this. And your point is interesting about not embracing the creative and it kind of leaking through on screen, right? Just kind of coming through. At the same time, you talked a lot about the Hardys. You've talked a lot about their longevity. You talked about how they've split apart, come together. And every time people went crazy. AEW, they went crazy. I was there when they came back in WWE just a few years ago. They went crazy. These two tag teams, how do you compare them? How do you decide a winner before you do?
Yeah, so the comparison is the longevity, and the comparison is the money drawn. That's the comparison between the two. I mean, obviously their in-ring styles are different, their statures are different, their presentation is completely different, but both teams travel the world, and both teams on a national scale and international scale drew a shit ton of money and sold a shit ton of merch, and influenced a whole generation. The Road Warriors, like I said before on previous episodes, they influenced and they created, or there were copycats created because of them. Demolition, a promotion that was supposed to be superior to the NWA, the WWF at the time, creates a copycat of the Road Warriors. And then on top of that,
you're with me on that. Like, some people, Bruce most notably, have said, it's not a copycat at all. Are you out of your fucking minds? Like, they have one word names.
Yeah.
They come to the ring and attack you before the bell. Like, the whole thing was, to me at first was a low rent LOD, but then they made it work because those guys can wrestle.
Yes, those guys were incredible. I mean, fucking hell, both of them are incredible wrestlers. But Demolition, Sting, and the Blade Runners, Warrior, the Master Blasters, even Barbarian and Warlord.
Sure.
All these guys were all copycats. We're saying copycats. That's not even mentioning all the copycats on the independent wrestling scene. You know what I mean? At the time, where people would have the one-word names and all dress up like the Road Warriors. Same thing with Matt and Jeff. They created a whole new style of wrestling, not just tag team wrestling, but wrestling, a Daredevil style that people look up to who are wrestling now. They looked up to it then. There were a ton. Because I came along, started in 2004, right after. The Hardys were still obviously on top, but after their big run as a tag team, and every independent promotion had at least one Jeff, even up until now, one Jeff or Matt Hardy lookalike.
And where you grew up, where you came up, the Hardys were a big fucking deal, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. They were probably the most over and most famous North Carolinians in the professional wrestling scene up until FTR. Here we go.
They spawned not just copycats, but people that they influenced. You've got Trevor Lee, in WWE right now.
Darby Allin.
You got people that come out of their camp even, and Gregory Helms or Shane Helms and Shannon Moore. And then you have, like you said, Motor City Machine Guns. You have the Young Bucks. Yeah. You have all these great tag teams that took this I guess the Rockers meets backyard trampoline wrestling legitimized and just went fucking crazy. There is no doubt I would say these are the two most influential tag teams of all time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with that. I think that subconsciously for the wrestlers, the most influential, and I think if you ask a lot of the wrestlers from that day, the most influential tag team of all time, and they'll never get the credit because no one understands it except for a select few of us, is the Midnight Express. Because the Midnight Express are the reason you have the hot tag. And I know people will say, well, what about Ricky and Robert? I understand that. Robert did get the hot tag, but Dennis and Bobby were the first real heels to bump around and bump and feed. And that's where the bump and feed came from Dennis and Bobby. They created that style of wrestling too, the high spot style of wrestling that the tag teams that tag team wrestling became known for. The two heels who would come in and take up, or like one heel would take a bump, take a drop kick. The other heel feeds in, throws a clothesline, duck one. He takes a drop kick, boom. You know what I'm saying? And they would double feed all the things Vince hates, dude. He hates double feeds. He hates bumping feeds from two guys.
He forbid it after a while, right?
But he forbid it. And that's one of the reasons he hated me and Dan, is because we continued to do it after he would tell all the producers to tell us to stop. But yeah, dude, that's what makes tag team wrestling different. I mean, if you go back and you watch Dennis and Bobby, they were the ones who put in this high spot wrestling. They knew how to take the matches up and how to bring them back down. And we'll talk about those guys, like I said, on a later episode. But subconsciously, without wrestlers today knowing, they are the most influential tag team in the ring. Their style has been adopted from everybody, literally everybody, whether they know it or not. As far as outwardly, the two most influential tag teams of all time probably are Hardy's and the Legion of Doom.
All right. So according to the criteria you have set your three favorite tag teams of all time home. Art and Tully and the Rock and Roll and actually two of them, but you've got a couple of them left. These are two of your favorite tag teams of all time. Oh, you sent the Midnight's home as well, right?
And I said Heart Foundation.
And you said the Heart Foundation. So, Hey, these are real 5-star. This is Dax really trying to do the work, guys. But now we're down to these two. Objectively, I think you're able to look at this, even though you may work with one of these people, and you're able to say, this is the greatest tag team of all time. Dax Harwood, do you have a decision?
I do have a decision. This is the greatest tag team of all time in the 2023 tournament. Let's put it like that. I think that all the things we named, money drawn, longevity, influence on the business, I think that the winner of the 2022 FTR with Dax tag team tournament, greatest tag team of all time in did I say 2022? Shit. I messed that whole thing up. Shit. The fucking winners of the 2023 FTR with Dax tag team tournament has got to be, and please tell me what you think, Hawk and Animal, the Road Warriors.
Oh my goodness. Congratulations to Hawk and Animal. And a lot of us agree. And if you disagree, go ahead and tweet us. Go ahead, but do it. Don't do it like some people like, how fucking dare you leave off Ricky Steamboat, you piece of shit. Don't do it like that. Just say, hey, I disagree. And we will probably do this tournament again. Maybe reseed everybody.
Yeah.
Could be a yearly thing. Maybe add some tag teams that we left out.
Yep.
But the winners are without a doubt the Road Warriors /LOD, the greatest tag team of all time. How do you feel to close us out, Dax Harwood, about the tournament and the winners?
I feel very, very, very good about it. I've surprised myself, man. I honestly, going into this tournament, I thought that I was going to, the winner of my tournament was going to be my favorite tag team of all time, Bobby and Dennis. I thought the Midnight Express were going to win the whole thing. But after being objective and doing the research and figuring things out and talking through it as well, I feel pretty confident about the final two that I put, and I feel confident about the winner. And I don't think anybody that was in this tournament would, they could disagree, but the people who are still with us today, I think they could see all of my points and say, okay, they're right. You know, if I talked to Ricky Morton, I think he could understand why I sent LOD above them. And, but I bet he has his own reasons why they should go above LOD. I think if I talk to Matt Hardy at TVs and I say, well, you know, this is why I put LOD above you guys, he could say, I understand that, completely understand that, but here's why I think me and Jeff should have won. And there, that doesn't mean anybody's right or wrong. That's just my opinion, what I think.
How about this? In 2024, if we do this again, if we're allowed to do the podcast then, and maybe we do a panel, maybe we ask a couple of your friends what they think as well.
For sure. Yeah, I would love to.
All right, guys. If you're listening to this, that means the live show is over, and you guys saw the stuff that happened. We're glad that you joined us. Of course, if you want to advertise with this podcast, go ahead and hit up Advertise with FTR. Get one of your T-shirts, of course, at FTRball.com. You can get Dax is my homeboy. You can get the Dios de la Muerta shirt, the Day of the Dead shirt, Dax Harwood design, as well as all kinds of designs over at Box of Gimmicks. And guys, we will see you next week on FTR with Dax Harwood.
Tore it down, waiting on them, but they're here now.